Well, good afternoon, everybody. 6 minutes past the hour of 3 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. I am Brian Wilson, and you're listening to The Drive on this 9th day of October. It is a Monday, and we're ready to get busy here because we got a lot of ground to cover. Boy, the events of the weekend continue into the week, and I'll give you my best assessment of it and give you a lowdown on what's happening now and what I think the big issues are here. Let me start by saying that I feel very grateful that I've had the opportunity to have walked the area between Israel and Gaza. I mean, when I was a correspondent for the Fox News Channel after Yasser Arafat died, I approached my managers and I said, I don't really understand the Mideast, and with Yasser Arafat now out of the way, there was some hope that there might be a real lasting peace in the area. Turned out not to be true, of course, but there was some hope at the time. And there was a person who had offered to take me with him. His name is Dennis Ross, a former Mideast envoy, a man who knows more about the Mideast and forgotten more than most people ever know, been involved in many of the peace negotiations that have taken place over the years. And he offered to take me with him, and I asked if the bosses if I could go, and I did. It's like getting a master class in Mideast politics. It was remarkable how much I learned and how much access he had. But at one point, it was the folks at the Jerusalem Bureau for Fox said, hey, listen, we're going over to Gaza tomorrow. Would you like to go along? And I said, well, yeah, I think I would. And so I thanked Ambassador Ross, and I hooked up with Mike Tobin and his team there at the time. And they took me down to Gaza, and we entered through the Erez Gate and went into Gaza. And I'll spare you all of the stuff that happened. It's a fascinating story, but not really important to all this. What I noticed is in that area between Israel and Gaza and Gaza City, there's a big wide open field. And when you go through there, you just see all of the destruction. Because every time, the folks over in Gaza would lob a rocket over into Israel, Israel would go in, and they just go right in. Literally, they can enter Gaza with impunity. There is nothing to stop them. And they have gone in many, many times. And so there's sort of a barrier place, but it was nothing but destruction from those past skirmishes and battles. And then you go deeper into Gaza, and Gaza is sort of what you'd expect to see in that region. It has some high rises. It won't be easy going into Gaza because all of your enemies are going to have the high ground if you go into Gaza City, and they will. But the one thing that I am absolutely sure of is that the Israelis will prevail in a huge way. There is no way that the forces of Hamas are going to have anything but a bad outcome here. The Israelis are incredibly good at what they do. Apparently, there have been some intelligence lapses, and we'll talk about that. But, man, you just don't want to be on the receiving end of the Israeli army. I promise you that. So when I see that, the one thing that I noticed is that the Israelis, they've got observation balloons, and they have the entire Erez Gate area surrounded by military. So, they're always there. And I was shocked and stunned that there wasn't better intelligence, and that, that they did not, with our help. We keep an eye on that region as well with all of our various intelligence resources. There really wasn't much of a heads up about all this, which is shocking. But listen to this. We work hand in hand with Israeli intelligence. Our intelligence services work with them, and they work with us all the time. But here is the National Security Advisor to the President of the United States. A man who has access to any intelligence that is available. A man who is supposed to be on the leading edge of knowing what's going on in the world around us, and to be able to find out when there are things that don't look right. Like, thousands and thousands and thousands of rockets making their way into Gaza City and to Lebanon. I mean, how did they miss that? This is Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor for the Biden administration 2 weeks ago. This is unbelievable.
And what we said is we want to depressurize, de-escalate, and ultimately integrate the Middle East region. The war in Yemen is in its 19th month of truce. For now, the Iranian attacks against U.S. forces have stopped. Our presence in Iraq is stable. I emphasize for now because all of that can change. And the Middle East region is quieter today than it has been in 2 decades.
Excuse me. What did you just say?
And the Middle East region is quieter today than it has been in 2 decades.
Well, no, not so much. You just didn't see it. The Biden administration, if either they chose not to see it or they missed it. Our president got up so the attack began about 11 o'clock at night, and our president did not arise until 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning. And he even admitted that.
I got up this morning, started this at 7:30, 8 o'clock, my calls. Hamas terrorists crossing in Israel, killing not only Israeli soldiers, but Israeli civilians.
I've often asked the question about, well, do you trust this president to take the call at 2 a.m. in the morning? You know, are you okay with him, being awakened in the middle of the night and having the presence of mind to make good decisions? When we talk about his obvious, mental decline. Well, I just got the answer. They don't wake him up. No need to wake up the old man. We'll take care of this. They didn't even wake him up in the middle of the night. And then you hear things like this from the State Department. This is Matt Miller, who works in the Biden State Department.
I can confirm that 9 Americans, unfortunately, have lost their lives as a result of these horrific attacks in the region. We are in close contact with the government of Israel as they continue to conduct security operations to locate missing U.S. citizens, missing Israeli citizens. And we are, of course, in close contact with the families of these 9 deceased Americans and offering them any consular assistance that we can provide.
Does the U.S. have any sense of how many American citizens or dual citizens are missing at this point?
It's very hard to say. It's a number that moves all the time as the Israeli military continues to conduct military operations. There are missing Americans who are unaccounted for. We continue to work. Some of them will be located, we suspect. Some of them may unfortunately turn out to be deceased, but we will work on that with the government of Israel in the coming days.
And is there any information available as to whether or not any of them have been taken hostage?
We cannot confirm that at this point.
Again,
there are
they don't
reports
know
of that, but there are Americans who are unaccounted for, and our first priority is to locate those Americans, find out what their status is in the coming hours and days.
They didn't have any idea how many people from the United States are missing. They don't know if any were taken hostage. We now know that 9 Americans are dead. That's about all they know. It's easier to count dead bodies, I guess, suppose, than to find people who are being held hostage. I would grant you that, but still, they don't seem to be on top of it. This was brought up in an interview that Abe Lincoln, our Secretary Blinken of the State Department, the Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken. In an interview this weekend on one of the Sunday shows, he pointed out that this was happening on the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War. Okay. Was that not something you thought might be a significant date? In that part of the world, dates like that are important. Did you not think that there might be something that your enemies in the world might do on the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War?
This is the worst attack on Israel since 1973, the Yom Kippur War. Almost exactly 50 years ago.
How do you explain this intelligence failure, especially on the anniversary of the Yom Kippur War?
George, there'll be time to look at that and to make determinations about what may have been missed. And right now, the focus has to be on the effort to get to repel the aggression by the Hamas terrorists, to push them back, and to put Israel in a position where this doesn't happen again.
But there are implications for the United States as well, of course. We rely on Israeli intelligence, don't we?
We have a very close relationship with Israeli intelligence, as well as with the Israeli military, as well as with Israel more broadly. So yes, of course, this is something that they and we will be looking at. But the effort right now has to be in dealing with the aggression from Hamas, with these attacks. There remains intense fighting around Gaza. We had about 1,000 Hamas militants who infiltrated Israel. Most of them seem to have either been killed or have gone back into Gaza. But as I said, intense fighting remains.
Well, he is right that it is better at this point to look forward rather than to look backwards about what you missed. And there'll be time for that. And but there are glaring problems that this was missed. This is not something that should have been missed. Look, it's the Iranians that are responsible for this. Absolutely responsible for it. Much has been written about the $6 billion that was recently released by the United States and allowing Iran to once again draw upon those monies. Now they say, well, they can only draw upon it for humanitarian, purposes. I want to mention to you that if you don't know this concept, money is fungible. And that's a word you're going to hear a lot of, which it means it's, if you take that money and say, okay, we're going to release $6 billion, $6 billion and give you the ability to use that for humanitarian purposes, then other monies that they had already set apart for, feeding their people and humanitarian purposes can then be redistributed in a different direction. I mean, come on. The Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, was asked about that as well.
Iran has unfortunately always used and focused its funds on supporting terrorism, on supporting groups like Hamas, and it's done that when there have been sanctions, it's done that when there haven't been sanctions, and it's always prioritized that. And again, I come back to the proposition that these funds have always been, under the law, available to Iran to use for humanitarian purposes.
Well, then why are we releasing money? To me, the $6 billion being released, and they say, well, only for humanitarian purposes, that's not the message that we ought to be focusing on, because when you release that, why did you release that money? You released that $6 billion, and in exchange, the Iranians released a number of people that they were holding hostage who were Americans. What's the lesson that the Iranians and other people in that part of the world gather from that action? That if you take hostages, America will pay you a lot of money for them. That they do negotiate with hostages. That's exactly the message that gave. I said, well, there's a green light now. Let's go out and get a bunch of hostages because the Americans will pay up. That's the lesson. Now, they say that none of this $6 billion has actually been spent, and they have not let any of that money go. That they say that they can refreeze it. Why aren't they refreezing it today? Why? That would be a message that would send a very strong message. Okay, I know we told you could have that $6 billion, but I'm afraid we're going to have to take that word back because you supported Iran. You supported these militants in Hamas who've carried out. You helped to plan it, as a matter of fact. The Hamas leadership has already said, Iran had full knowledge and helped us plan it. That's all I need to hear. Freeze that money today. And then, and you need to understand that our greater enemy in the world, the United States' greater enemy in the world may be Iran. So, $6 billion. No, it can't be spent. Well, it is it can be spent, and if they refreeze it, that would take that whole thing, that whole money would be out of the equation. But they honestly, according to others who know a lot about this, including a former Secretary of State, our policies have been very lax toward Iran with regard to a lot of the money that they've been allowed to have. I'll explain all that after we take a break. 20 minutes now past the hour of 3 o'clock on Super Talk. Folks, I want to talk to you today about gold. Gold has been used as money for millennia. It is a tried and true store of value and is consistent across generations. In fact, generational wealth has three components. They say you can buy land, you can buy art, and you can buy precious metals. Well, land and art can be difficult to obtain, but precious metals like gold, platinum, and silver are a practical solution. Inflation is currently decreasing the value of your money. Do you have gold that was given to you? You're not sure what it's worth, or are you just curious about, in precious metals and want to learn more? Why don't you start by going to visit with my friends at Nashville Gold and Coin? They are always available to discuss your options and to educate you on the precious metals market. Do what I did. Go to Nashville, real source of money, Nashville Gold and Coin, NashvilleGoldandCoin.com. Listen, they will also, if you have old silver coins laying around, bring them along. You might be really shocked and surprised just how much those old coins are worth. But listen, you'll get a one-on-one appointment schedule and learn a lot from these folks at Nashville Gold and Coin. Learn more at NashvilleGoldandCoin.com.
The White House staying quiet on the Iran and Israel conflict, more strikes around the nation. And for you and your friends in low places, maybe call them up. Get ready. You may have a place to hang out here soon. We'll have those stories at 5:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you, Matt Murphy. Matt Murphy's in the, not Matt Murphy, Mac Maury, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Golly. Well, that's all those M's. They get me confused. Mac Maury in the newsroom. And Chris Webber is back from a few days off, and not a day too soon because it's going to be a busy rock and roll day. There are 900 to 1,000 Israelis are dead. New number just in that 9 Americans have now been killed. We don't know how many were kidnapped. We believe that total, somewhere around 150 people have been kidnapped and taken back into Gaza, and with extreme brutality. I mean, savagery like you have never seen. Here's the thing you need to know. The Hamas leaders have said that if you come into Gaza or if the strikes continue, we will start killing those that we kidnapped. We may lose all of those people who were kidnapped. And we don't know how many Americans might be among them. But now we know that 11 Americans are dead. And if there are people inside Israel who want to get out, or if the Hamas has taken American citizens, the number one priority ought to be to get them back. And so we do have an interest. And I don't know. I don't know exactly how they're going to handle that. But, we're not hearing anything from the White House today other than, don't take advantage of the situation. That was a couple of days ago. We're warning of those in the world not to take advantage of this situation, the chaos in the world, to carry out other things. Who are they talking to? Are they talking to China? Are they talking to Russia? Are they talking to North Korea? Who are they talking to? I don't know. But we have this money that we gave them, the $6 billion, and Secretary Blinken says no, none of that money has been spent. But it is true that Iran has always used money for terrorism. Why are we talking about Iran? Iran supports Hamas. Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State, says we're not being truthful. They're not being truthful in talking about money that Iran has access to.
And, I've heard their storyline. They're gaslighting the American people, saying that $6 billion didn't benefit Hamas and Hezbollah, who's now attacking from the north, and the Palestinians in the West Bank. Forget the $6 billion if you want to. $20 or $30 billion worth of sanctions failures. That is, they stopped enforcing the very sanctions that the Trump administration was enforcing, gave $70 billion worth of reserves accessible to the Iranians. That's real money for the Iranian regime. And so the way you square this is to continue to put pressure on the primary actor, the world's largest state sponsor of terror, Iran. It's now the case that the Iranians have killed 9 Americans. It requires a response against Iran. You can't just keep taking out militias and knuckleheads in Iraq. You have to go at the heart of the beast, and that is the Iranian leadership.
Wow. That's where I think we may be headed. I think we may have to do something with regards to Iran. I mean, obviously, this appeasement, this engagement effort by the Biden administration hasn't really worked because they were easy on Iran when it came to sanctions. They had access to $70 billion that they otherwise would not have had if the sanctions were strictly enforced. That's the Biden administration policy of appeasement. And that money can be used for bad things, as we have just witnessed. Wow. 4,600 rockets have been launched against Israel. Some of those are dumb rockets, and some of them are smart rockets, precision-guided rockets. And the dumb rockets, what they do is they fire the dumb rockets first until they overwhelm the Iron Dome protection that Israel has. And when all of the Iron Dome is spent catching the dumb missiles, then they send in the precision-guided missiles, which, will hit their target. It's how in the world could 4,600 rockets make its way into Gaza with the barricades and the blockades and all of that? How in the world did this happen? How did that get through? And that's one of the big questions that we'll be asking. Bibi Netanyahu spoke to the people of Israel a short time ago. We'll tell you what he said. And perhaps the strongest language we have heard in America on this whole thing came from a man who was once Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. He spoke today, and it was powerful. We'll get on that in just a moment. Right now, it's 3:30 on Super Talk 99.7.
3:30, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Mostly sunny, 73 degrees on Music Row. Traffic and a weather forecast coming up in 5 minutes. In an op-ed with the Wall Street Journal, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell suggested Congress could tie future aid for Israel with the request for additional aid to Ukraine. Im Nguyen has more from Washington.
Amid the unrest in Israel, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell suggested Congress could potentially link future aid for Israel with an outstanding request for additional aid to Ukraine, according to his op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. This after aid to Ukraine was left out of the spending bill that passed that would keep the government open through mid-November. For now, it appears there is bipartisan support to send funds to Israel after the deadly attacks by Hamas militants. Meanwhile, President Biden is preparing to speak with allies about the situation in Israel.
The White House put a lid up today, meaning there will be no comments made from President Biden on the attacks today. Walgreens pharmacy employees signaling a possible strike on the horizon, citing harsh working conditions. Here's Will Reeve.
Walkout organizers telling ABC News that more than 700 employees from the company's 9,000 stores are planning on participating, hoping to improve what they're calling understaffing and poor working conditions. One employee telling ABC News employees are overworked, juggling vaccine appointments, filling prescriptions, answering phones, and as a result, in some cases, are seeing prescriptions going unfilled.
And the company telling WSIL it recognizes that the last few years have been challenging and is committed to ensuring the team has support and resources, including making investments in pharmacist wages and hiring bonuses in some locations. Some entertainment news. Garth Brooks getting ready to open his new Friends in Low Places bar and honky tonk with a dive bar concert next month. The concert is set for Black Friday. Dive bar concerts are inspired from his single dive bar that he came out with Blake Shelton. That's the latest news. Weather and traffic next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
You know, the folks over at Eurofix have a very different business philosophy. They staff all of their locations with more staff than the average auto repair shop. That's so they can be ready when your emergency pops up out of nowhere. Have you ever noticed how hard it can be to get a right now appointment for vehicle repair? Some dealers, well, you can wait more than 2 weeks just to get an appointment, but not at Eurofix. Eurofix has been offering quality repairs that beat the dealer without dealer pricing since 1999. Plus a 3-year nationwide warranty and the staff to fix your car now. If you're tired of waiting forever to get your car into the shop, why don't you call Eurofix? Owner Aaron Stokes says we will never be too busy for our customers. We are here to take their pain away now. Eurofix repairs all European cars, and Eurofix says yes to speedy repairs when other can't or won't. Family owned for some 24 years. Call 844-EUROFIX or visit myEurofix.com. That's myEurofix.com.
The Middle East region is quieter today than it has been in 2 decades.
That's the National Security Advisor for the Biden administration speaking 2 weeks ago, saying that don't worry, we got this thing under control. The Middle East is so quiet, and it's all because of our great management of world affairs. That's right.
The Middle East region is quieter today than it has been in 2 decades.
These folks are clueless, absolutely clueless. And we haven't heard from our president today. There's a thing in Washington. It's a lingo. It's a word that they use to describe when something is, done for the day. They said, we put a lid on it. Well, at the White House, they called a lid at 11:46 and told the White House pool that there would be no events with the president today. No briefing, no events with the president. Nobody's talking. Nobody's out there, talking about what the United States response should be. So let me just open up the phone lines, and they'll be open for the next hour or so. 615-737-9986. What do you think the United States response should be in all of this? And you remember, we're talking about Hamas and Gaza, but also their supporters, the people who are funding all of this, which is Iran. They're able to fund this because we have let them redevelop their oil fields, and they're getting a lot of money coming in from their oil revenue, and that's what's fueling and paying for a lot of the terrorism around the world. A short time ago, Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister, spoke to the Israeli people. It was in Hebrew. There was no English translation. Jennifer Griffin, however, from Fox News, was able to get the download very quickly on what he told them.
He outlined how the Israelis must now come together and unite. He called on the opposition parties to join a unity government. He suggested that a ground incursion into Gaza will be imminent. He said that that Israel will secure its borders on the West Bank as well as in the north, where Hezbollah has been testing Israel this afternoon. And he also said that again, to prepare the nation for war. He said that any of the misinformation, and he called it fake news, that there had been an Egyptian warning by Egyptian intelligence to him 10 days before this attack. He said that is absolutely not true, and that should not be believed, even though it was published in some Israeli newspapers this morning. So he pushed back very hard on that. He said that he was going to appoint a point person in charge of the hostages in the Gaza Strip, but he was very firm, very certain that the nation is at war. They need to unify. He's calling for a unity government, and he said that Israel will secure its borders.
Well, yeah, listen, I'm telling you, they'll go into Gaza with impunity, and they will. It'll be a tough fight because Hamas will have the high ground. But believe me, they've been softening the battlefield in recent days. And the Israelis are more than capable of going in there. I mean, they could enter with 10,000, much less 100,000. And some people say that before it's all over with, 250,000 troops may be amassed for this operation. 250,000. This is going to be ugly, but not as ugly as what has happened to the state of Israel. We have not heard from our president at all today. We did not hear from him yesterday, although apparently he had time to go to a nice little barbecue out on the South Lawn, a barbecue for staffers who work at the White House, people who work in the private residence, I'm told. He had time for that, but he didn't have time to come talk to the American people. And if he's out doing barbecues, why isn't he in the Situation Room is what I want to know. The only person that really I thought got it right today and was out there talking about, how we should respond was the former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy. Here is a little bit of what Kevin McCarthy had to say with regards to Israel.
The very first thing we need to do is rescue the American hostages.
Well, he's absolutely right about that. Why aren't we pounding the table about that? Why aren't we why isn't the president pounding the podium talking about you touch one hair on any of our hostages and you will regret the day that you ever did? Where is that? Why isn't that happening?
President Biden's number one priority right now must be finding out how many Americans have been taken hostage.
And as you heard earlier, we don't know. We have no idea. They believe that somewhere around 150, maybe 100 people have been taken hostage. We don't know how many of those might be Americans. We know that, according to new numbers that came out just this hour, 11 Americans have been killed in these attacks by Hamas.
And get them home. We need to resupply Israel where they have no doubt that they will ever be overwhelmed.
Well, hold on. Here's another question. Can we do that? After all of the weaponry that we've sent to Ukraine, do we have the ability to resupply Israel? And if we resupply Israel and continue to send weaponry to Ukraine, will we have enough to defend our borders should something really start to get ugly here? This thing start to widen out? I don't know.
We must counter this new axis of power. It's an evil axis of Iran, Russia, and China.
Yeah. Here's what I'm most concerned about now, and then we'll go to the phone lines and take a couple of your calls. Just so be patient. I'm coming your way. One of the things that I'm worried about is the fact is that we don't know how many terrorists might have come across our borders. We know that the Customs and Border Patrol, they have had contact with 151 people on our terrorist watch list. But we also know that 1.7 million people have come across the border that had no contact with law enforcement whatsoever. They just came across. We don't know who these people are. And given the fact that there's been such a horrendous failure of intelligence to keep tabs on what's going on, do we know what cells are working inside our own country? And if we supply Israel or we support Israel or we go in and do what we have to do to get our people back with Delta forces or whatever they choose to do, if they have the guts to do what would be the right thing, well, then those terrorist cells strike out here on our own homeland. Honestly, this is the thing I've been talking about. There's going to come a day where we are going to really resent the fact and really regret the fact, rather, that we did not have security on our southern border, because we don't know who's in our country right now. It's entirely possible that Hamas cells are operating within the borders of the United States. If you were Hamas and you saw the chaos on our southern border, would you not try to infiltrate some people into the United States? Of course you would. I feel certain that there are terrorist cells that are operating inside the United States, and we don't know anything about them because of our policies on the border. Hard to say how many people are missing. 900 to 1,000 Israelis dead. There apparently is a report of 100 people being found in a small farm town dead. And we don't know how many have been kidnapped and taken back into Gaza. And if they've been taken back into Gaza, where are they? And what is their condition? It's an ugly, ugly, ugly situation. Now, at the end of the day, I have no doubts that the Israelis, they don't really need our help, but let's, we may have to take action on our own to protect our own interests. How do you feel about that? David in Green Hills, you're on with Brian on the Drive. What do you say, David?
How are you, buddy?
I'm fine. What's your thought?
Man, I'm thinking more COVID shots to do the trick. That gay Jesus love bomb. I tell you what, man. Number one, the United States should not get involved. It ain't our business. Pretty soon the Protestants and the Catholics are going to start hacking one another again in Western Europe. I don't know. This thing's been going on for how long? And they just can't seem to work things out. The whites and the blacks worked things out in the South during the civil rights. And, it's gone on for too long. I mean, these people, until you have property rights, until you have a one-state solution, you've got an open-air prison camp, no different than the Warsaw Ghetto, in which the Jews rose up against the Nazis.
All right. Thank you, David. I appreciate your thought. I want to get another call or two in here. James in Woodbury, you're up on the drive. Hello, James. What's your thought, James?
Yes, sir. Thanks for taking my call. But I feel, first off, I would like to say that Israel has every right to defend themselves, just as any other nation does. But we should not get involved. As George Washington stated, we should not involve ourselves in foreign affairs.
Let me just stop you there, because I want to ask you just one follow-up question to make sure I understand. What if we need to go in and get our people?
Well, I mean, obviously Americans should take care of Americans, but we should not intervene ourselves in a greater conflict. The tensions in that region are the.
Does that mean we don't support Israel with weaponry and as we always have?
We shouldn't support them or Ukraine.
All right, James, thank you for that. I greatly appreciate it. Buzzy and Mount Juliet, you're on with Brian on the drive. What do you say, Buzzy?
Well, I think we've already got our response from Biden. He had a great little barbecue, and he hasn't said anything. And we, the American people, seem to be funding this war because he just gave them all the money they needed to do this. And he doesn't seem to be worried about it. That's why you're not getting a response. And talking about our border and all the people that's come over, I was hearing the other day that we have so much debt now, and they're wanting to spend more and more, that nobody even wants to take on our debt. So what are we going to do when we keep printing money and nobody wants to pick it up? We're not even going to be able to defend ourselves unless we reallocate money from everywhere else in America to even take care of ourselves.
So I'm detecting an isolationist theme here, that we should just keep our noses out of it.
No, I think that. No, I do not, because I think that with who we have in charge,
I got you. Okay, that we can't expect them to do anything. Right.
Well, they're not going to do anything. They're not going to do anything right, because if smart as they really are, they knew what was going to happen. Don't you think?
I don't know. It seems that it was a complete shock. Buzzy, thank you for the call. We'll go back to the phones throughout the afternoon. So if you have some thought, you can get on there at 615-737-9986. 51 past the hour now on Super Talk. People in our area know that Genesis Diamonds is a value leader. They've proven it time and time again these days. Value is so important. The thing to remember, Genesis is a true direct importer with connections that go back for 50-plus years. No middleman markups, no consignment fees, no third-party people to pay. And unlike other stores, Genesis works on a low profit margin. Their business is built on volume at a great price, so they don't have to make a killing on every sale. It's the opposite of what you've come to expect in jewelry retailing. But one thing people here really love about Genesis is this is where you can get her a better ring, a designer ring, a handcrafted ring that reflects how you see her. And while other stores sell knockoff rings or crappy overseas rings, at Genesis, you can get her a stunning designer ring made in America by top designers, rings that are made to last. Bottom line, she will probably show off a Genesis ring because it won't be a mass-produced ring. It will be something unique, something amazing. That's what Genesis specializes in, combining the best diamond value with the best quality ring to give her and you the total package with a free lifetime warranty as well. Genesis Diamonds. Check them out, Green Hills and Cool Springs. And don't forget about their incredible collection of amazing luxury pre-owned Rolex watches.
Hey folks, Paul Winkler here. One of the things that we see from time to time, well, way too often, is this. Let's say that you go to a financial advisor and they say, hey, you need to set up an investment portfolio, and what we need to do is we need to have some of your money in stocks or mutual funds or ETFs or something like that, and we need to have something fixed or guaranteed in your investment portfolio that'll protect you against the market downturns. And quite often what they're talking about, they may not use this word, but often what they're talking about is putting your money into some sort of an annuity, like an indexed annuity or something like that, or a fixed annuity. And what they're doing is they're saying, hey, let's put your money in both of these, which sounds really good. And you should. And typically in an investment portfolio, you do want to have fixed investments and stocks as well in the portfolio to protect against inflation. But here's what happens when you manage a portfolio. Let me use a really, really simple example. Let's say I have a portfolio and I got stocks in there. Then I have my fixed income, my bonds in the portfolio as well. And let's say I have half my money in each. When stocks really do well, what we want to do is they're going to be overweighted in my portfolio. I own too much of them because they've done well compared to bonds. It was supposed to be half and half, and now maybe it's 70% stocks and 30% bonds, let's say, or something like that. So I want to sell some of this and buy some of that to bring it back to 50-50 and back and forth throughout time. Well, the problem is when you're managing a portfolio and rebalancing in that way, bringing it back to the original portfolio mix of half and half in my example, I'm going to have to incur a trading cost or a commission or a back-end surrender with the annuity. It doesn't make any sense to use that product in this particular manner. Why do people do it? Well, the reason quite often is this. Commissions are very high with these products. And a lot of firms, they actually require their advisors to recommend a certain amount of annuities for every person that walks in the door. Now, typically annuities are used for a different purpose. They were actually designed for a totally different purpose. And that was distribution toward the end of life. When somebody looks like they're going to run out of money, they're annuitized. Now, let me tell you something. One study showed there was only like 5% of annuities are ever used in that fashion. Most often they're sold as an accumulation vehicle like this, and they were never really designed for that purpose. If you want to learn more, call us for a free 15-minute phone call, or go to our website, paulwinkler.com. The number 615-851-1950 or paulwinkler.com. We don't do anything on commission, and we like to rail against these types of things and help investors do what is in their best interest. paulwinkler.com.
The latest on the Israel and Iran conflict, some crime right now in Tennessee. A 13-year-old was shot. And some updates on the UAW strikes. Mack trucks now involved. 4 o'clock, Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Taking a look at the markets. Well, here we go. Dow Jones Industrial up 197 points. The S&P up 27. The NASDAQ up 52. So all screens are green here today. So what's going on out there, and what will happen to the price of oil? Ty Draper is standing by from Beacon Capital Management with more on that. Hello, Ty.
Hey, Brian, oil prices popped by 4% in the wake of the surprise attacks by the militant group Hamas, and that rose Brent prices up to $87.85 a barrel and WTI to 86.9. Now, most analysts are believing this is just going to be a knee-jerk reaction, and any meaningful impact on the oil market would have to be really sustained reduction. But conversely, if the fighting extends to Israel and Iran, and maybe even including Hezbollah, then we could see maybe a $5 to $10 bump in oil prices. And kind of side note here, gold and silver prices indexed up over 1.5% today. So a lot of uncertainty, a lot of people fleeing for safety.
All right. Thank you much, Ty Draper. And learn all the things they can do for you over at Beacon Capital Management by going to their website, askbeaconnow.com. It is now 59 minutes past the hour of 3 o'clock. You know, one of the hardest things we see as we grow older into adulthood is that our parents and our loved ones are getting older as well, and they struggle with the things that were once so simple in their lives. It reminds us that they're approaching an age when they're going to need more and more help. And this is where assisted family care can help. They can connect you with a responsible, compatible helper who will assist you with your loved one's daily needs. And if your loved one is a veteran or a spouse of or a widow of a veteran, they might qualify for a little-known benefit to help cover these kinds of expenses. See, many veterans are eligible to receive up to 20 hours of daily living assistance each week at no cost to them. But the application process is daunting and confusing. Don't worry, the folks over at Assisted Family Care can help you. That's right, Assisted Family Care can help. Assisted Family Care will be there for you. Visit AssistedFamilyCare.com or call this number, 615-833-9725.
.401, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories right now. 74 degrees, a nice sunny day on Music Row. Shouldn't get super cool tonight like we felt over the weekend. The low tonight, 49, where we felt highs in the 30s, lows in the low 40s earlier this weekend. Complete weather and traffic report in 5 minutes. The latest on the Israel and Iran conflict, Daria Albinger.
Israel's prime minister says its response to Hamas has just begun. Benjamin Netanyahu ordering a siege of Gaza, cutting off water and electricity to the region as he vows to settle the score, he says. The United Nations warning that the conflict could make an already desperate humanitarian situation even worse.
Following this weekend's emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council, Secretary General Antonio Guterres Monday.
I am deeply distressed by today's announcement that Israel will initiate a complete siege of the Gaza Strip, nothing allowed in, no electricity, food, or fuel.
He says the humanitarian situation in Gaza was already extremely dire.
Now it will only deteriorate exponentially.
Dave Packer, ABC News, New York.
Casualties on both sides continue to rise. President Biden today saying that 11 Americans are confirmed dead.
Crime right now in Tennessee. A shooting that resulted in an injured 13-year-old in Clarksville last night is now being investigated. Officials say it was in the Summit Heights housing area when some juveniles aged 12 to 16 were in a fight. And after the fight, reports say one of them fired shots from down the street. Police say this is not a random act. The 13-year-old girl had injuries on her upper leg and was taken to a hospital for treatment. And workers at Mack Trucks on strike after rejecting a tentative contract deal. The United Auto Workers saying thousands of unionized workers walked out this morning. Here's Caroline Gogan.
This is now the latest labor agreement to be voted down by its members. Right now, about 25,000 of the 146,000 United Auto Workers employees at General Motors, Ford, and Stellantis are on strike. They've been on strike for about a month. The president of Mack, which is owned by Volvo, said the company is surprised and disappointed that the workers have chosen to strike. He says that this move is unnecessary. And at this time, there is no word on when bargaining between these Mack employees and United Auto Workers will continue.
And workers and pharmacists at Walgreens also announced a strike starting today. That's the latest news, traffic, and weather on the way. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Good afternoon, everybody. It is 4:08 on Super Talk 99.7. I am Brian Wilson, your friend and radio buddy, and you're listening to The Drive, second hour of The Drive. Listen, we'll have an interesting hour here. We'll give you the very latest on Israel. We'll talk a little politics because there is a interesting development about the battle for the speakership. And at 4:35, we will be joined by senior senator from the state of Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn. Had a chance to chat with her briefly over the weekend, and she got a lot to say about the situation that is ongoing between Israel and Hamas. It's really, I just want to say it's really not a war against Gaza. It's a war against certain elements within Gaza that are associated with Hamas. And the complicating factor is Hamas is supported and funded almost entirely by Iran, another country with whom we have difficult relationships, even though we just freed up $6 billion, for them, so they can add that to their budget. I love this thing. I had not heard this before. Mike Pompeo says, you really forget the $6 billion. Because, the administration says, well, they haven't touched a penny of that, so this is not money that went to fund this. Well, Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State under President Trump, says, you know what? It doesn't matter because the Biden administration has not been supporting the sanctions and the blockades against Israel, and they've amassed a lot of money because the Biden administration has been so lax in their appeasement of Iran and their appeasement and their willingness to try to open up some kind of diplomatic relationship with Iran. Well, this is how we get paid back. But listen to Pompeo.
And, I've heard their storyline. They're gaslighting the American people, saying that $6 billion didn't benefit Hamas and Hezbollah, who's now attacking from the north, and the Palestinians in the West Bank. Forget the $6 billion if you want to. $20 or $30 billion worth of sanctions failures. That is, they stopped enforcing the very sanctions that the Trump administration was enforcing, gave $70 billion worth of reserves accessible to the Iranians. That's real money for the Iranian regime. And so the way you square this is to continue to put pressure on the primary actor, the world's largest state sponsor of terror, Iran. It's now the case that the Iranians have killed 9 Americans. It requires a response against Iran. You can't just keep taking out militias and knuckleheads in Iraq. You have to go at the heart of the beast, and that is the Iranian leadership.
Yeah, we're going to have a word with the Iranians. There's no doubt about that. But is the Biden administration really interested in doing that? Well, we don't know, because our president hasn't been seen today at all. Nor was he seen yesterday, though apparently he had time to go to a barbecue for staffers of the East Wing. What's going on over there? We the American people haven't had any information come. We've heard nothing from our president, save for a short speech that he gave on Saturday, and then he just disappeared, vanished off of the scene. We don't know what's going on. They called a lid at 11:46. Basically, when you say you call a lid, that means that you're not going to see the president all day today. The only American official who has been out there today forcefully saying what I think are the right things is former Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy.
The very first thing we need to do is rescue the American hostages. President Biden's number one priority right now must be finding out how many Americans have been taken hostage and get them home. We need to resupply Israel where they have no doubt that they will ever be overwhelmed. We must counter this new axis of power. It's an evil axis of Iran, Russia, and China.
That's McCarthy today. And so he's been making some appearances talking about this. And then the question ultimately becomes, have you considered putting your name in competition to replace, well, you? I mean, he's no longer Speaker of the House. Would you go and run for re-election to that seat? And he hasn't said no, which is interesting.
Look, the conference decides all that. This isn't about the speakership. This is about where we're currently serving. Watch what happened in Israel, where 9 Americans died, 800 Israelis. That's the equivalent of 30,000 Americans if it happened here. This is happening because of weak leadership. The president puts a lid on. Where is anybody else? I am still a member of Congress. I understand the relationship between America and Israel. I have dear friends in the leadership there and living there. And I'm not going to sit back and do nothing. What I have found what's going on, if we had listened to Matt Gaetz, we would be in a government shutdown right now. So our own troops wouldn't be being paid. What strength would we have in the world then? If 8 people want to side with all the Democrats for their own personal beliefs, that's fine. But I'm elected to go serve, and I'm not going to sit back and watch what's happening around the world and be quiet because the rest of leadership won't. Look, I'm a conservative that wants to govern. But if we have a majority and 96% want to go one way, but 4% gets to decide what happens, that's not a majority. And the idea that Matt Gaetz is going to divide a Gaetz, a Mace, and a Pelosi decision on who's going to be our speaker, that's wrong.
Yeah, it is wrong, and so I think he might throw his hat back in the ring. He said he wasn't going to, and then he made it clear because there was a report that he was going to step down from his congressional seat, but he said no, that's not true. I plan to run for re-election. So is McCarthy back in the race? Yeah, it sounds like he might be. He has not been figured into the latest totals that I've seen, but the totals that I saw suggest that Jim Jordan has more support. You know, we did hear that allies of McCarthy went out very early on after he was voted out as speaker by, the vacate 8 and all the Democrats. Allies were in contact with people saying, keep your powder dry because you don't know how this thing's going to play out. So what I sort of think might be developing here is that you might have a round where McCarthy's name is not in consideration, and that would probably end up with I don't know, Jordan getting more votes than the other candidate. This is blank for a moment. Golly. Jim Jordan and I can't think of the guy's name. I'm sorry, but it would probably get more votes than as the leading candidate. Jim Jordan. I'm sorry. I think Jim Jordan will be with the leading votes, and then but I don't think McCarthy will enter until the second round. And if nobody is elected in the first round, then it would be McCarthy perhaps having enough votes to be reelected. See, nobody really expected that it would be a big deal if we didn't have a House of Representatives. That's the bottom line. And so McCarthy might be able to, because of the news of the moment, cobble together enough votes to return to the speakership. I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but it'll be something to watch. So there you have it. So McCarthy not saying no, saying he'll get into the race. I have it right here. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry that this Scalise. I'm sorry. Steve Scalise is the other. As I've seen, I got a thing here that says that Scalise is behind Jim Jordan. Kevin Hern of Oklahoma has not yet announced, but said he'd be interested in running. But now it sounds as if, and even President Donald Trump has received a couple of endorsements as well. And so there is a tally, and the tally shows that Jim Jordan has more votes than Steve Scalise does. So there we have it. Will McCarthy get back into the race? It's a great question. One thing I would say is I think that the news of the moment might necessitate a quicker decision than we might already otherwise have. This is no time to not have a functioning House of Representatives. Without a Speaker of the House, you can't function. There is an argument being made that Patrick Mahenry, who is the Speaker pro tem, might be able to go forward and conduct business in the House of Representatives, but we're in territory that we've never been in before. We don't know whether or not that will stand up to legal scrutiny or not, but one way or the other, I think that there will be an impetus to get a quick decision and that will start tomorrow. Members of the House will return to Washington tomorrow after being home over the weekend, and they will go behind closed doors. The one thing I can tell you is it's going to be sort of like waiting for them to announce the Pope. They're going to be behind closed doors, and until we see white smoke or somebody comes out and says somebody's got 200, and I think somebody says 217 votes, then it seems as if we won't know. They're going to do it behind closed doors rather than on the floor, because it was such an ugly scene last time, where we watched the 15 rounds on the floor of the House. Won't be that way this time. Won't be this way. They will not come out and take it to the floor until they have made a decision as to who they're going to support. Will it be Jordan? Will it be Scalise? Will it be Hearn? Will McCarthy, make a resurrected effort to return to the speakership? It's hard to know exactly how it's all going to play out right now, but if you had to make a wager on it, I would say Jim Jordan is the likely winner. But who knows if McCarthy gets back into the race, how that might all play out, because a lot of people would support McCarthy. He has a lot of support. In fact, he had the support of 96% of the conference. So can he find enough votes out of the vacate 8 to put him back in the speakership? Maybe because of the importance of the moment, and that we are not it's not a good time for us to be without a working House of Representatives. Maybe that might happen. We'll see, and we'll watch it very closely. It is now 20 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Busy bee, when you need heat or cold AC, and right now you might need either one. It's been sort of cool, at night. Is your heater working okay? Well, if it's not, why don't you call the number I would call, 615-775-7833, and the folks at Busy Bee will buzz over to your hive and take care of your problem. Listen, you should really consider becoming a member of the Beehive Club. This is how you avoid those problems with preventative maintenance. You see, as a member of the Beehive Club, you can be a member for as little as $99. You get 3 thorough maintenance services on your systems. 1 at the beginning of heating and cooling season, 1 aimed at your plumbing, no overtime charges 24/7, and 10% off all repairs. I mean, if you have to have a major repair, you can get that $99 back pretty quick, couldn't you? Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling is your official Rude Pro partner. For satisfaction guaranteed, call Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling, 615-775-7833, online at busybeehvac.com.
Looking at the latest in this Israel and Iranian conflict, a missing woman here in Tennessee, plus the money news. That and more, 4:30 right here, Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
24 minutes past the hour. Dan Manders just sent me a note on my phone, a text message, said, all across Middle Tennessee, people were yelling, Steve Scalise! Steve Scalise! Don't you hate it when you have that brain fart, and you just can't? I've been so focused on Israel and all of that and trying to re-immerse myself in that world that, that was the only thing we talked about last week, it seemed like, when that was all going on. And I apologize. It's one of those things, senioritis, I suppose, got me. Have you ever had that moment where you're trying to remember the one thing, and then you panic because you can't remember,
and then that just makes it worse. Yeah,
it makes it worse. Yeah. Absolutely right. Well, I apologize, but it was Jordan, Scalise, and now maybe McCarthy. We'll see what happens. The United States is sending a carrier strike group to the Middle East in support of Israel. The Ford Carrier Group will sail to the eastern Mediterranean to be ready to assist Israel after the attack by Hamas. I mean, one of the first things a president will ask is, where are my aircraft carriers? Because an aircraft carrier is a projection of force into a region. I would be very concerned, though, because, one of the things we know is that Iran has these missiles that can take out big ships. And if you're in that area, you are putting yourself at you have some exposure there. We have some ways to protect against that, but they're not foolproof. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the Navy's newest and most advanced aircraft carrier, 5,000 sailors and a deck of warplanes, including top-of-the-line Navy F-35s. The large deployment will include, now, when you send an aircraft carrier, you just don't send an aircraft carrier. You send a whole host of ships and support vessels and warplanes, and incidentally, you also send submarines. Preliminary reports indicate that at least 4 Americans, well, the number now, by the way, is now 11. Along with the Ford, the U.S. is sending the cruiser USS Normandy, the destroyers USS Thomas Hudner, USS Ramage, and USS Carney, and USS Roosevelt, and is augmenting Air Force F-35, F-15, F-16s, A-10s. Oh, man. That would be a valuable weapon to have in a conflict like this. The U.S. maintains ready forces globally to further reinforce the deterrence posture if required. Now, I hope, what they will not be talking about is that certain forces will also be moved into the region. Things like Delta forces, SEAL groups, that kind of stuff will be also moving into the area, because one of the things we're going to have to figure out is, where are our hostages and how many Americans are being held hostage. We either we don't know or we're not saying. I suspect it may be a little bit of both. We don't know where they are, where they got taken. I mean, the intelligence on this matter was so bad, that nobody saw this coming. Nobody had a clue that this was about to happen. And how does that happen when you're talking about, moving in thousands and thousands of rockets into Gaza and into other areas occupied by Hamas? How in the world can you do that and nobody know it? There are blockades that are going on there. We have amazing resources that can look down. Well, I think they're doing it old school. I think they're sending messengers, personal messengers. They're not relying on the internet. They're not relying on email. They're not relying on text messages. They're actually sending people with handwritten notes to do their planning. And the word is that Iran was actively involved. Hamas has said that Iran was actively involved. So how deep do we get into it with Iran? Americans have already died. 11 Americans now is the official number, have died in this attack, this Hamas attack, unprovoked attack on Israel. And that number will no doubt go up. And we don't have any idea how many Americans might be kidnapped, and we don't have any idea exactly how many people in total have been kidnapped. We don't know where they are. And as the troops come in to Gaza, 100,000 troops amassing at the border with Gaza City and the Gaza Strip. As they come in, and they will come in with impunity, there needs to be an understanding that Hamas will start killing the people that they kidnapped. We are likely to lose more people. We are likely to lose Americans, and the numbers are likely to go up. This is ugly. This is perhaps one of the most savage attacks that the world has ever witnessed, and it's not going to get better anytime soon. This is going to be something that will play out over the next weeks and months as Israel prepares to go into Gaza with a massive force. Now, they'll win. They will extract revenge. They will force Hamas to pay a pound of flesh or more, but it's going to be ugly warfare. It's now 30 minutes past the hour, 4 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.30, I'm Mac Maury with your top story. 74 degrees in Music City. Full weather forecast. Latest traffic report on the way in 5 minutes. Palestinian militant group Hamas launching a surprise assault on Israel with continuing attacks targeting Israeli city centers, civilian communities. President Biden condemning the attack and promising continued military assistance to Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowing to, quote, settle the score as he orders a siege of Gaza, cutting off all resources to the Gaza Strip. President Biden, in a new statement announcing the American death toll so far. Karen Travers has the latest.
President Biden says in a statement that the State Department is providing assistance as well as updated security alerts for American citizens who are currently in Israel. The president says for those Americans who want to leave, commercial flights and ground options are still available, adding, please also take sensible precautions in the days ahead and follow the guidance of local authorities. President Biden said Monday afternoon that at least 11 Americans are among those killed in the violence, and his administration believes it's likely that Americans are among those held hostage by Hamas.
And National Security Coordinator John Kirby said today that there is still not any proof that they found that Iran had involvement in the attacks. A missing woman in Tennessee. News 2 reports that Clarksville police are on the lookout for 64-year-old Wanda Mosley. She's from Alabama. She moved to Tennessee back in August and was last seen on August 13th at a shelter. She's 5'1" tall, weighs around 170 pounds with red hair and green eyes and may be wearing glasses. Now over to some money news. Daria Albinger.
Stocks rebounded after a jittery start. The Dow closed up 197 points. It had been down 154. The Nasdaq rose 53 and the S&P closed up 27. Stocks slipped early on as the conflict in the Middle East caused more unease in financial markets around the world. Here in the U.S. for the first trading after Hamas launched a surprise attack over the weekend against Israel, which then formally declared war. The markets managed to recover, though, as 2 Federal Reserve officials suggested they may not need to raise interest rates again at their next meeting, which will take place at the end of the month. We will get 2 major reports on inflation this week, the Consumer Price Index and the Producer Price Index, which will measure inflation on the wholesale level. Well, first there were Prime Days. Now Amazon is kicking off Prime Big Deal Days on Tuesday morning with discounts on brands including Peloton and Casper mattresses. It runs through Wednesday.
And that is the latest news, traffic and weather on the way. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Let's talk about EverSeal, and I should start by giving you an explanation of what EverSeal really is. It's a sealant that can be used on your exterior wood or concrete, but it's not like any sealant you've ever used before. I promise you that. The technology's actually been around since, for ages. It's been used in industrial applications. But the folks over at EverSeal figured out how to provide this permanent solution for sealing your exterior wood and concrete at a price that home and business owners can actually afford. First, they come in and they do a deep cleaning of your wood and concrete, make it look just like it's brand new. And then they apply their patented sealant, which will absorb all the way through. It doesn't just sit on top of it. It actually becomes a permanent part of your wood and concrete, and it will prevent any further deterioration for the next 30 to 50 years. I mean, that's pretty good, isn't it? Right? Well, I mean, honestly, think about it. How much money will you save? How much time will you save? Because you don't have to do this year after year after year. Sound like a good idea? I think it is. Why don't you reach out to Steve Nelson and the team over at EverSeal? 1-844-EVER-USA. Learn more at ever-seal.com. .38 minutes now past the hour of 4 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Of course, the major story of the day is what has happened over the weekend with the invasion and the attack against Israel. And now we have Israeli troops poised to invade into Gaza. The situation very serious. Joining us on the Newsmaker hotline is the senior senator of the state of Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn. She is, of course, a member of the only functioning half of the Congress. And we're glad to have you, Senator. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, your thoughts about what's happening. We now are hearing that 11 Americans are dead, and we don't have any clue as to how many might have been kidnapped or where they might be.
You're correct with that, and we know that we will get updates on the deaths as we move forward through the next few days. We also are waiting to find out hostages. We are hearing that there are Americans that have been taken hostage. And we do not know the number of Americans that are injured. We do know it's a number north of 2,000 that have been injured. So that's kind of the framework of the casualties that we know. And of course, Brian, I have just prayed, as I know so many have, for Israel, for the nation, for the state of Israel, for the people that are in harm's way. And this is an unprovoked attack. We do know that Iran participated, coaching Hamas, working with them to draft this attack. And this is the reason why we have said do not release any of those $6 billion to Iran. We hear that once the $6 billion was approved to be transferred to them, that they escalated the planning and then last week gave the go-ahead to carry out this attack. So I am leading a letter in the Senate calling on the White House to rescind the waivers that would have allowed the South Koreans to go through that process of transferring that money. It was held in South Korean accounts, and it was transferred the end of September to accounts in Qatar. But we need to rescind the waivers that will allow the Iranians access to that money.
Yeah, I'm a little shocked that they didn't say right off the bat, let's refreeze that money. They didn't. That should have been the first thing they announced.
They should have done that, and they should have done sanctions, because Iran is making a bundle of money selling oil to Russia and to China. And what we should have done is put those sanctions in place. Another thing we've got in our letter is to disallow banks to process, sanction banks if they process any of these funds. And I'll tell you something else I think needs to happen. Qatar needs to allow extradition of these Hamas leaders that are cuddled up in safety there in Qatar, send them to the U.S. to face charges for war crimes and for what they have done to American citizens and to the Israeli people.
Well, I agree with you 1,000%. You know, we're supposed to have good relationship with Qatar, but I'm wondering if we really do. Okay, very quickly, a couple of really quick snippets that I want you to react to. Here is Jake Sullivan 2 weeks ago giving a speech about how he sees the Middle East right now.
The Middle East region is quieter today than it has been in 2 decades.
Well, they were wrong about that. And then the President of the United States hasn't been seen today at all, will not be seen today at all. But when he did poke his head out briefly over the weekend, he told us that he got up at about 7:30 and 8 o'clock to begin his round of calls.
I got up this morning, started this at 7:30, 8 o'clock, my calls. Hamas terrorists crossing in Israel, killing not only Israeli soldiers, but Israeli civilians.
There's just one problem. The attack against Israel began the previous night at about 11:50. It's like they didn't wake the old man up.
That's right. And so this had escalated before he got into making any kind of comment about this and sending a message to the terrorist organizations. Look, Hezbollah has gotten in this. They're shooting rockets into the north, and you've got them coming into the east. And Brian, they need to say right now, don't you even think about this. And I have said specifically, anything that shoots, sells, flies, or spies, we need to send it in there right now and be sure that Israel has everything they need to defend themselves.
Well, a lot of people are asking a question about that. A lot of people are asking a question about that. Do we have enough supplies, given the fact that we've been sending all kinds of weaponry to Ukraine?
We do have supplies. We have supplies that are stationed over there in the region. We have supplies that are there in Israel, and they need to get this to them. As I said, anything that shoots, sells, flies, or spies, if they need it, we need to turn it loose so that Israel has what they need to defend themselves. They are our greatest ally in the region. They have been a constant and steady partner. We have helped them with building the Iron Dome. We have helped them focus on these defense capabilities, and we need to stand with them through this. This is an unprovoked attack. You have had the Ayatollah come out and say this is all part of getting rid of Israel, which they want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. And this is part of their steps to doing that. So Iran, the largest state sponsor of terrorism on the face of the earth, has used Hamas and now Hezbollah, two of their proxies, two of them, to go in here and do this attack against Israel.
We're sending an aircraft group in there, the
That's
USS
right,
Gerald
the
Ford.
Ford.
And
Right.
so let me ask you a question. I mean, at what point should our U.S. military get involved in this? I mean, the Israelis don't need our help going into Gaza. They can put 100 or 200,000 people into Gaza, and they just don't need us with boots on the ground. They probably need us with intelligence, but we have an interest here in that apparently it appears that Americans are being held hostage. Should we should we use our military to try to rescue them if necessary, if we can figure out where the heck they are?
We're going to have to take steps to go in and secure American citizens. I do not know what those steps are going to be. I have no doubt that they are working on what those steps are going to be. But we want to make certain that our people are safe and secure. And, Brian, that is something that is going to be developing. But Israel has said, we don't need your troops, we need your support. And that is why the armor, the ammo, the equipment, as I say, shoots, cells, flies, spies, get everything in there that they need.
All right. I mentioned it at the top. You serve in the United States Senate, which is at least functioning at the moment. We don't have a functioning House of Representatives, and I don't know how long it's going to take to get that resolved. What's your take on it? I know it's not your body of responsibility, but nonetheless, do you have any thoughts about how that might get resolved and how quickly it might be resolved, or is it going to take a while?
I don't know. I think I'm like so many Tennesseans. As you watched this last week, you would think, well, what's their exit strategy? What is the game plan? And there didn't seem to be one. And now this has occurred over the weekend. And when the White House did their briefing to the Four Corners, which is the Democrat and Republican leaders of both the House and the Senate, then they did not have anyone from the House that was invited to that, even though they have a Speaker pro tem and they also have a House leader. They were not included in the briefing, and they used not having a speaker as the excuse for eliminating or omitting having someone there.
Wow. That is, when the Gang of Eight was briefed, there was nobody from I guess the House Intelligence Committee could have been there, but were they?
No, they did not. And my understanding
because they don't have a functioning House.
That's right. That's right.
Oh man, that's something else. That's really something. Well, Senator, I know you have to go, and I appreciate you so much for being on our program. Thank you so much for stopping by on this busy news day. All right. Marcia Blackburn reporting in from about her perspective on all this. And look, we do have an interest, and the interest is we have Americans there, and it appears, although the numbers are a little uncertain, we have Americans there, and those Americans are perhaps being held hostage and could be executed if Hamas is to be believed. Hamas has said if Israel comes in, we'll start killing terrorists. Hostages. We'll start killing hostages one by one. And so if that happens, can you imagine, especially if they do it in a public way, which I would imagine that they probably would, really the difficult times that are going on in that part of the world, and our interest, we do have interest there, and we do have interest in supporting Israel. And we do have military in the region. I don't think we're going to get involved in a big way, but I do believe that it's entirely possible that we will take action if we can just figure out where our people are. Should we do that, or should we just leave that to the Israelis? I think we should be prepared to do it on our own, but a very limited involvement of U.S. military. It is now 50 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Let me tell you about the Wellness Institute of Nashville. Dr. Kevin Mitchell there is my doctor. He can be your doctor as well. The Wellness Institute is bringing back half off spinal decompression treatment and half off the KT knee machine, which is sort of like spinal decompression for your knee. That's half off as well for the month of October. And if you have any tingling or numbness or weakness or back pain or disc bulging or disc herniation or spinal stenosis, if you've heard any of these phrases used, then Dr. Kevin Mitchell has treatments that could well make you better. Are you losing quality of life and not able to do things that are mostly routine in your past because of your back pain or your knee pain? Take advantage of the Wellness Institute's $23 new patient special and half off spinal decompressions. That's right. For $23, new patients will get an exam, consultation, x-rays if needed, bring in your own MRI. Your first treatment will be just $23. And you'll get half off of spinal decompression and half off KT knee machine going forward. Dr. Mitchell, a nation's leader in spinal decompression. And if this is something that you think you want to be involved in, why not give him a call, 615-246-5009. Learn more at painisbad.com.
Hey folks, Paul Winkler here. One of the things that we see from time to time, well, way too often, is this. Let's say that you go to a financial advisor and they say, hey, you need to set up an investment portfolio, and what we need to do is we need to have some of your money in stocks or mutual funds or ETFs or something like that, and we need to have something fixed or guaranteed in your investment portfolio that'll protect you against the market downturns. And quite often what they're talking about, they may not use this word, but often what they're talking about is putting your money into some sort of an annuity, like an indexed annuity or something like that, or a fixed annuity. And what they're doing is they're saying, hey, let's put your money in both of these, which sounds really good. And you should. And typically in an investment portfolio, you do want to have fixed investments and stocks as well in the portfolio to protect against inflation. But here's what happens when you manage a portfolio. Let me use a really, really simple example. Let's say I have a portfolio and I got stocks in there. Then I have my fixed income, my bonds in the portfolio as well. And let's say I have half my money in each. When stocks really do well, what we want to do is they're going to be overweighted in my portfolio. I own too much of them because they've done well compared to bonds. It was supposed to be half and half, and now maybe it's 70% stocks and 30% bonds, let's say, or something like that. So I want to sell some of this and buy some of that to bring it back to 50-50 and back and forth throughout time. Well, the problem is when you're managing a portfolio and rebalancing in that way, bringing it back to the original portfolio mix of half and half in my example, I'm going to have to incur a trading cost or a commission or a back-end surrender with the annuity. It doesn't make any sense to use that product in this particular manner. Why do people do it? Well, the reason quite often is this. Commissions are very high with these products. And a lot of firms, they actually require their advisors to recommend a certain amount of annuities for every person that walks in the door. Now, typically annuities are used for a different purpose. They were actually designed for a totally different purpose. And that was distribution toward the end of life. When somebody looks like they're going to run out of money, they're annuitized. Now, let me tell you something. One study showed there was only like 5% of annuities are ever used in that fashion. Most often they're sold as an accumulation vehicle like this, and they were never really designed for that purpose. If you want to learn more, call us for a free 15-minute phone call or go to our website, paulwinkler.com. The number 615 851-1950 or paulwinkler.com. We don't do anything on commission, and we like to rail against these types of things and help investors do what is in their best interest. paulwinkler.com.
The latest in this Iran and Israel conflict. What's Mitch McConnell saying? Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn joins the drive and gives some information. The Lebanon town square had to be shut down today. Plus, more strikes around the nation concerning some major companies. We'll tell you who, we'll tell you where, we'll tell you everything you need to know at 5 o'clock right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Well, as we know, many people are getting into their cars at 5 o'clock during the newscast with Mac Morey. And so we are going to do a recap of everything we know about the situation with regard to Israel. And then we'll give you an update. There's this little bit of news from RFK.
I'm here to declare myself an independent candidate. An independent candidate for President of the United States.
How does that change things? We'll talk about the 2024 race and how it's shaping up. There is news and new information about all that. It's all straight ahead coming up in the next hour on Super Talk 99.7. I'm Brian Wilson. You're listening to The Drive. Let me tell you, if I could, about King and Associates Insurance in Brentwood. They've been around for some 25 years as an independent agency. Now, that is, I think, a real advantage for you. Let me tell you why. Number one, they give you great customer service. If you dial this number, 615-329-8121, you're not going to reach a call center. You're not dealing with one of those internet companies. You're dealing with a company that actually cares about you. An actual person, a human being, will answer that phone and take care of you. And then the other thing is, because they're an independent agency, they don't have to push the things that they have that don't really fit your need. In other words, they're not going to be trying to put a square peg into a round hole. They can shop around and find the policy that really works best for you. Isn't that what you want? The policy that can save you money but really gives you effective coverage and great customer service? I mean, what's not to love about all that? By the way, multi-policy discounts can be huge. 20, 25, 35% savings. So listen, get your royal review with King and Associates Insurance. Just log on to tkinginsurance.com. I'm going to repeat that, tkinginsurance.com. King Insurance and Associates, royal treatment and great rates.
5 o'clock, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. 74 degrees right now on Music Row. We got a full weather forecast, plus that latest traffic report. It's upcoming in 5 minutes. In an op-ed with the Wall Street Journal, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell suggested Congress could tie future aid for Israel with the request for additional aid to Ukraine. Im Nguyen has more from Washington.
Amid the unrest in Israel, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell suggested Congress could potentially link future aid for Israel with an outstanding request for additional aid to Ukraine, according to his op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. This after aid to Ukraine was left out of the spending bill that passed that would keep the government open through mid-November. For now, it appears there is bipartisan support to send funds to Israel after the deadly attacks by Hamas militants. Meanwhile, President Biden is preparing to speak with allies about the situation in Israel.
Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn joined WTN's The Drive with Brian Wilson and gave an update on American citizens in peril there.
We also are waiting to find out hostages. We are hearing that there are Americans that have been taken hostage, and we do not know the number of Americans that are injured. We do know it's a number north of 2,000 that have been injured.
National Security Coordinator John Kirby said today that there is still not any proof that Iran had involvement in the attacks. Today in Middle Tennessee, the Lebanon Town Square was shut down this morning due to a chemical situation. Reports say that a chemical barrel caught fire, leaving lingering rat poison fumes in the air. The square and businesses have since reopened. And another group of healthcare workers striking in California days after 75,000 Kaiser Permanente nurses and other healthcare workers went on strike. Alex Stone.
With complaints similar to those of their counterparts at Kaiser, about 1,800 workers at Prime Healthcare, which owns St. Francis Medical Center, and others in Southern California, say they need better pay and better staffing. They say current staffing levels are unsafe. Mayra Castaneda is an ultrasound tech.
We have people working 20 hours shifts, 18-hour shifts. You don't get your lunch breaks.
This strike is set to last 5 days. A Kaiser strike went 3 days. In this strike, Prime Healthcare says it is bargaining in good faith.
Walgreens workers also on strike. Pharmacists, technicians, and support staff staging a series of walkouts at various stores nationwide, saying there's a heavy prescription and vaccination workload and high performance expectations. And got some crime in the Volunteer State News, too, saying that 10 people were arrested over the weekend for selling balloons that were filled with laughing gas. Officials said most of them were not from Tennessee. The laughing gas was then being inhaled by the buyers. In addition to those arrests, authorities seized about 20 cylindrical canisters. 3 vehicles were also seized as evidence. That is the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Mac Maury, WTN News.
Good afternoon, everyone. 6 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. It's the Drive at 5. That's right. We're bringing you news and information you can use. And there is a lot going on in the world, as you know, over the weekend. A lot of activity in the Middle East. And we're going to be talking about that throughout the afternoon. I'll bring you up to date on the latest information that we have. So that, because a lot of people come in, they've been out all day, they get into the car, they want to know what's the very latest. About 1,000 people now thought to be dead in Israel as a result. Israelis have lost about 1,000 people so far. These numbers are rounded, and honestly, in a state of war situation with the fog of war, takes a while to get these numbers locked down in a real accurate and specific way. But at least 1,000 people dead. Americans, we now have heard that 11 Americans have been killed in this action against Israel. A lot of Americans, of course, spend time in Israel, have dual citizenship, many of them. And so, it's not surprising that there would be Americans that would be part of all this. The thing we don't know, and we'll get into this, is how many people might have been kidnapped and are now being held hostage. Hamas has said that if Israel comes into Gaza, they'll start killing the hostages. That's why they were taken. and where did they get the idea to take hostages? Well, I think something might have happened, when they saw what we did with Iran. We gave them $6 billion in fungible dollars in exchange for a number of prisoners. And the message is everybody's focused on the $6 billion, and that's something to think about. We'll get into more of that in a moment. But really, the message that the more concerning thing is that we traded money for people. And so now the message that the Middle East has received is if you take hostages, Americans will pay you a lot of money to get them back. See, we put our nation and our American citizens abroad in great danger as a result of that. So that's one of the things that I am very concerned about is that everybody's focusing on, well, we gave them $6 billion. Well, maybe they can use that money or maybe they cannot. It depends on who you talk to. But the one thing that I think was even worse than that was why they got the $6 billion is because they released a bunch of hostages that we wanted back very badly. We pay for hostages under the Biden administration's policies. And that lesson was observed all across the Middle East. That's why we have an undetermined number of hostages now being controlled by Hamas. Okay, what's going on? Bibi Netanyahu spoke to the nation of Israel. He spoke only in Hebrew, and since I'm not really sharp on translating Hebrew, but I have someone who was. Jennifer Griffin at Fox News translated the things that Bibi Netanyahu said in his address.
He outlined how the Israelis must now come together and unite. He called on the opposition parties to join a unity government. He suggested that a ground incursion into Gaza will be imminent. He said that that Israel will secure its borders on the West Bank as well as in the north, where Hezbollah has been testing Israel this afternoon. And he also said that again, to prepare the nation for war. He said that any of the misinformation, and he called it fake news, that there had been an Egyptian warning by Egyptian intelligence to him 10 days before this attack. He said that is absolutely not true and that should not be believed, even though it was published in some Israeli newspapers this morning. So he pushed back very hard on that. He said that he was going to appoint a point person in charge of the hostages in the Gaza Strip, but he was very firm, very certain that the nation is at war. They need to unify. He's calling for a unity government, and he said that Israel will secure its borders.
Well, they will. They will secure their borders, and they are amassing troops, maybe, according to some reports, as many as 100,000 troops, maybe before it's all over, 250,000 troops to go into Gaza. I've actually walked that land between Israel and Gaza. I had the opportunity many years ago to be, given a tour of the area by a guy who knows more about the Middle East than I'll ever know, a guy named Mike Tobin, who was a correspondent with me at the Fox News Channel. Took me down to Gaza one day, and we went through the Ares Gate and into Gaza City. And as you enter the Ares Gate, first of all, the security is remarkable. You just wouldn't believe the level of security. One of the things that you notice is that the Israelis have a lot of military equipment right outside the gate or near the gate that peer down, like observation balloons, etc., that peer down on Gaza. Gaza's not that big. It's a small little strip of land. And as I look at it, I thought, wow, the Israelis have the ability to see everything that's going on inside Gaza, it would seem. Certainly they are supplemented in that by our intelligence, which we share with them, and we get information and intelligence from them. So it was really shocking to me that we didn't have a clue that this was about to happen, that the Israelis didn't have any real warning. In fact, I want you to listen to this soundbite from Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor to the Biden administration. There is no one in an administration who has higher security clearances than the National Security Advisor. Jake Sullivan. The Bidens, and I almost tell people in jest, but not really in jest, if you want to know what the proper thing to do in foreign relations is, look at whatever the Biden administration is doing and do the opposite. But Jake Sullivan was at a conference 2 weeks ago, and he was talking about how, things are remarkably quiet in the Middle East right now thanks to the way that we are handling policies in that region.
And what we said is we want to depressurize, de-escalate, and ultimately integrate the Middle East region.
Well, how's that working out for you, Jake?
The war in Yemen is in its 19th month of truce. For now, the Iranian attacks against U.S. forces have stopped. Our presence in Iraq is stable. I emphasize for now because all of that can change.
Sure can.
And the Middle East region is quieter today than it has been in 2 decades.
Can you believe that?
The Middle East region is quieter today than it has been in 2 decades.
That was the National Security Advisor to the President of the United States 2 weeks ago. We don't know much about what has happened to Americans that might have been taken hostage. Questions being asked of Matt Miller from the State Department by the folks at CNN.
Does the U.S. have any sense of how many American citizens or dual citizens are missing at this point?
It's very hard to say. It's a number that moves all the time as the Israeli military continues to conduct military operations. There are missing Americans who are unaccounted for. We continue to work. Some of them will be located. We suspect some of them may unfortunately turn out to be deceased, but we will work on that with the government of Israel in the coming days.
And is there any information available as to whether or not any of them have been taken hostage?
We cannot confirm that at this point. There are reports of that, but there are Americans who are unaccounted for, and our first priority is to locate those Americans, find out what their status is in the coming hours and days.
We don't know. We don't have any idea how many Americans are missing. We don't have any idea how many people might have been taken hostage, and their lives are at risk. The United States moving an aircraft carrier group into the eastern Mediterranean so that it could respond to assist Israel if needed. I think really the movements are probably to make sure that if we figure out where they are, where our American citizens who might be held hostage are, that we could take some kind of limited action to get them out and extract them from the dangerous situation they're in. Who knows, but we're sending a lot of resources into the eastern Mediterranean. Not that the Israelis need our help to bring the situation under control in Gaza or on the West Bank. They don't need our help. They've got tremendous assets. And I one of the things when I walked that area and drove through that area at the Ares Gate between Israel and Gaza, there's about 2 miles, I would say, 2 or 3 miles of area where, the Israelis have gone in time and time again, sort of a buffer, but they can run the tanks in there on 10 minutes notice. They can go in there so quick, and they can enter into Gaza with impunity. There's nothing that the Palestinians or Hamas can do to stop Israel from coming in. And they could really, I think, put Hamas in their place with 10,000 troops, much less 100,000. They're gearing up for a major war. When this starts in earnest, and what you've been seeing now is a softening of the battlefield. The Israelis are firing and taking out, key targets that they have known about forever inside of Gaza City, taking out buildings. Yeah, and you know what? There's going to be some civilians that die. There will be. There's no doubt about it. There certainly will be civilians who die inside Gaza City because Hamas puts all of their military assets and their intelligence assets and all of their leadership. They surround themselves and use the civilians inside Gaza as human shields. So, yeah, when they take out Hamas, there will be people who are collateral damage and that's not Israel's fault. That's because of the cowardice of Hamas and the way that they try to protect their equipment by putting their own people up as human shields. So they're going to go in and they're going to clean up, and then they're going to absolutely demolish anything that is connected to or even suspected of being connected to Hamas. It will happen, and it will be ugly. And by the way, even though they have an overwhelming force and should have no problem, it won't be easy. Because why? Because Hamas has the high ground inside Gaza City. Nothing but, tall buildings. They will always have the high ground. Urban warfare is brutal and ugly, but they will prevail. And they have everything they need to do that job. There is no doubt about that whatsoever. A lot has been said about the $6 billion that the United States released to Iran. And as I say, I think the bigger message there about the $6 billion is not so much that we release $6 billion for humanitarian aid, although money is fungible. That's something you'll hear a lot, and I'll explain that in just a moment. But the other side of that is that I think you have sent the message that, if you want money or if you want something from the United States, well, then just take hostages because they'll pay for them. Blinken pushed back on the $6 billion as being a problem. This is the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken.
Iran has unfortunately always used and focused its funds on supporting terrorism, on supporting groups like Hamas, and it's done that when there have been sanctions, it's done that when there haven't been sanctions, and it's always prioritized that. And again, I come back to the proposition that these funds have always been, under the law, available to Iran to use for humanitarian purposes.
Well, I'm not sure that he's telling us the entire story. And when we come back here in just a few moments, you will hear from former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who says, look, you're being gaslit by the Biden administration on that $6 billion. But there's more to the story, and I'll get to that right after a commercial break. It is 20 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock on Super Talk. Let me tell you about Johnny Fleeman's place. It's called Legend Steakhouse. Have you been to Legend Steakhouse in a while? I'm telling you, maybe you're thinking about going someplace for dinner tonight. Why don't you go to a Legend Steakhouse? Get one of those really tasty steaks. But if you don't have time to do it tonight, maybe you should go someday during lunch. Did you know that they do a lunch? Yeah, that's right. It's a meat and two country cooked vegetables, casseroles, served with cornbread and yeast rolls. Specialties include a fried pork chop, Smoky Mountain meatloaf, fried catfish, slow-cooked pot roast with gravy. And the sides that you get to choose from, oh, man, there's this good country cooking. Broccoli casserole, turnip greens, bourbon glazed apples, fried green tomatoes, a potato casserole, black-eyed peas. This is just the kind of cooking that you get at home. In fact, these recipes came from Johnny's mom. He borrowed the recipe book about 30 years ago and he just forgot to give it back. And here's something else that we want to tell you about. They're very proud that they can help out and will do everything they can to help veterans on Veterans Day eat for free. If you get to a Legend Steakhouse, they will feed you for free on Veterans Day. What a concept that is. You don't want to miss taking advantage of that. Legend Steakhouse To find out about their locations or maybe to look at their menu online, just go to legendsteakhouse.com. You're going to enjoy your next visit to Legend Steakhouse.
The White House's assessment on the Hamas attack on Israel, fatal crash investigation here in Tennessee, plus California becoming less sweet by the minute. Those stories and more 30 minutes after the hour of 5 o'clock right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
And, Mac, we're going to push you back with the wide world of sports until after the half hour.
Okay.
I know. But no, we got, because of breaking news, we have so much ground that we have to cover here today. Just this once, okay? Bear with me. I want to talk a little bit about this $6 billion. A lot of people say, well, you gave them $6 billion, and then the administration says, no, the $6 billion, they can't touch that. Well, there's this thing called fungibility. Money is fungible. It's incredibly fungible. And, so what that means is that if you give us $6 billion and you say, well, you can only use it on humanitarian aid and food for the people inside Iran, they say, okay, well, now that's $6 billion we don't have to spend on food and humanitarian aid. Now we can use that for something else. And Blinken says, oh, they've always done that. Listen to this.
Iran has unfortunately always used and focused its funds on supporting terrorism, on supporting groups like Hamas.
Well, then if that's the case, then why are we giving them $6 billion? Well, listen, Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State under the Trump administration, when we had real peace in the Middle East, and by the way, secure borders, says, look, they're not shooting straight with you about what they have done. He says that they have basically not been enforcing the sanctions, and therefore the Iranians who support Hamas, who attack the Israelis, they're getting a lot of money that they might not otherwise have because the Biden administration has been so lax with Iran.
And, I've heard their storyline. They're gaslighting the American people, saying that $6 billion didn't benefit Hamas and Hezbollah, who's now attacking from the north, and the Palestinians in the West Bank. Forget the $6 billion if you want to. $20 or $30 billion worth of sanctions failures. That is, they stopped enforcing the very sanctions that the Trump administration was enforcing, gave $70 billion worth of reserves accessible to the Iranians. That's real money for the Iranian regime. And so the way you square this is to continue to put pressure on the primary actor, the world's largest state sponsor of terror, Iran. It's now the case that the Iranians have killed 9 Americans. It requires a response against Iran. You can't just keep taking out militias and knuckleheads in Iraq. You have to go at the heart of the beast, and that is the Iranian leadership.
Well, there you go. That's exactly what I think is ultimately going to be our real concern is how do we deal with the Iranians going forward, bad actors on the world stage, and by the way, bad actors who are perilously close to having nuclear weapons. I have a feeling that some kind of entanglement with Iran may be in the offing for the United States. I hope it doesn't happen, but are we going to allow the Iranians to get nuclear weapons? Given, how they act on the world stage, I hope that we would not do that. So there's something to think about in the days ahead. Look, the other thing, very quickly, while I have just a moment left before we go to news at the bottom of the hour, I'm quite concerned about our own border and the fact that we don't know who's in our country. I mean, our intelligence was lacking on this. The Israelis' intelligence is often dependent on our intelligence, and we missed it, and the Israelis missed it. Well, if we're missing things right now, let me ask you this. What do we know about the 1.7 million people who came across our southern border and had never had any contact with law enforcement? We know that 151 people who did come in contact with the Customs and Border Patrol people they were on the terrorist watch list. But how many who are on the terrorist watch list slipped through with no contact with law enforcement, the so-called gotaways? Where are they? Who are they? Do we have Hamas terrorist cells operating within the United States? Think about this. If you're Hamas and you witness what's happening on our southern border and the chaos there, would you not want to try to take advantage of that chaos to bring your own people into the United States and let them set up an operation, go silent until they're needed? I think we ought to be thinking about that a whole lot. Because I think our own national security here in the United States, right here in the United States, is not good. I don't think we have any idea who has come in or what they might be up to. Just like they didn't see this coming with all the assets they have aimed at watching the Gaza and watching the West Bank, they missed it. What else have they missed? It is now 30 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. Time for the news with Mac Murray.
.5:30, I'm Mac Maury with your top stories. Currently 72 degrees right now on Music Row. We got a full weather forecast. That traffic report headed your way 5 minutes. Starting in the White House, they're offering their assessment on the Hamas attack on Israel and what may come next. Andy Field with the latest.
The White House criticizing some Republicans for blaming the president for releasing Iran's oil money to be held by a third party and then claiming it paid for the attack on Israel.
They're trying to find a way to politicize an arrangement and a negotiation that we executed to get 5 Americans back home with their families.
National Security spokesman John Kirby saying that money for hostages was frozen Iranian funds that can only be used with the U.S. okay for humanitarian aid to Iran.
And President Biden confirmed today that at least 11 Americans have died in this conflict. Crime in Tennessee. A fatal crash on August 18th has Clarksville officials asking for the public's help in locating a white SUV. It's an early 2000s model, chrome rims, and white running boards that was seen on camera footage. The crash happened on Wilma Rudolph Boulevard and Trenton Road. 19-year-old Joseph Cook was killed in that crash while on a motorcycle. And the Golden State becoming a little less sweet. California now the first state to sign a law to ban 4 chemicals used in popular candies and other sweet foods because of alleged links to health problems, including cancer. Alex Stone.
Now signed into law by Governor Gavin Newsom, red dye number 3 will be among the chemicals banned in California. It's used in products like Peeps, a chemical that's been linked to cancer and been banned in makeup for over 30 years. The new law will also ban other chemicals used in some store-brand sodas and baked goods. All 4 chemicals are already banned in food in the European Union. The maker of Peeps has said it's been looking for other options for its products. The law takes effect in 2027.
And that is the latest news, traffic and weather on the way. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Hey, if you got problems with your foundation of your home, the bricks are cracking, or maybe you see walls or doors that stick and that kind of stuff. Well, you know what the signs are. Well, if you have structural foundation issues or waterproofing issues, you call the people I would call United Structural Systems. Listen to this the testimonial from a customer. Recently had our foundation repaired by the team at USS. It was an exceptional experience. They finished ahead of schedule, kept us informed every step of the way, and restored everything perfectly, even after digging deep into our lawn and tearing out concrete. Their professionalism and courtesy stood out, working seamlessly around other vendors. Communication was top-notch, friendly, making the process smooth. What impressed us was the cleanliness. They contained the mess and left the site spotless. They got multiple quotes, and USS was not only competitive but honest. They didn't try to upcharge them as others did. They highly recommend USS. This comes from Joshua in Nashville. Thank you for that, Joshua. Look, if you need this kind of work done, there's really only one place to turn. United Structural Systems. They guarantee their best, serving Middle Tennessee, Southern Kentucky, Western Kentucky, Northern Alabama, online at USSTN.com, or call this number, 615-488-7855. It's time for Mac Morey's Wide World of Sports.
Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of sport, the thrill of victory, and the agony of defeat.
That's right. It's a fan favorite, and we're pushing it back just a little bit because of breaking news today, but it's time for Mac Morey. Here is the host of our program, Mac Morey.
Hello. Happy Monday.
Yeah, well, it is, unless you happen to be a member of the Tennessee Titans. I know. I mean, boy, this was not good. I mean, we had all these. Hold on a second. We got to get the stinger in there, boys. We had great hopes. We had great hopes that they had turned the corner after that last victory, and that we were going to see nothing but a string of wins, a bunch of wins. Now we are 3-2 on the season.
2-3 on the season.
I'm sorry, 2-3.
2-3 on the season, losing to the Colts, division rival, who are now 3-2 on the season and lead that division, or tied with the Jags for the lead in that division. This was a tough one, Brian and Chris. This was one where I really thought the Titans could have had it. If you told me that, Ryan Tannehill completes 65% of his passes, throws for over 200 yards, and the offensive line looks better, I'm going, wow. Titans had their best day maybe yet. And that's what happened, and they still couldn't put the points on the board. It feels like watching the Titans offense, it feels like it's always just kind of on the tightrope of, okay, let's see if we can convert this 3rd and 4, and do that 4 or 5 times down the whole field. Well, you're playing with fire. You're not going to do that every time. So you're settling for 3 more often than when you can try and get 6. It really feels like if the Titans could have a plan to get those 10 yards in 2 plays rather than 5 yards in 2 plays, and always be in that 3rd and manageable to even 3rd and long. And they did better on 3rd down, 5 for 12 in this game, but still, that's a lot of 3rd downs. And then defensively, you look at it, Brian, the Colts were able to run Zach Moss, 23 carries, 165 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, they just scorched on the ground. The Titans didn't have a chance. And I know one of their top defensive linemen was out in T.R. Tart, but that is not an excuse to allow almost 200 yards on the ground.
Conversely, they were able to contain King Henry. I mean, he only had 43 yards on the day.
Yeah, and this brings me to a sensitive subject here, and I just want, everyone sit down. If you're a Titans fan, I'm not calling it quits. I'm not saying Henry's done, but I think the game plan offensively needs to shift a little bit. I think years past where you're kind of relying on Henry to move the ball, I don't think that's going to be a thing anymore. And it's not because he's not still great. He is. But him being a year or 2 older and this offensive line being just not great to be, just frank, I don't think that's going to be your game plan. You've got a guy in Tajik.
Great runners usually have great offensive lines that give them a gap. All they need is a gap, and all he needs is a gap. If you don't get that gap, your best tool is ineffective.
Yeah, and we saw Henry at his best 2 or 3 years ago with an offensive line that was good. Then a year or two later, that offensive line, had some injuries and they were a little bit less, formidable of a unit. Henry was still able to make it happen because he's that star player, and he still has some of those capabilities, but he doesn't have the same burst he had. He's taken a million hits. They've got a rookie on the bench who played a lot as well, but 7 carries for 34 yards. And we've talked about a little bit, Tajay Spears. And they've got to start utilizing him more and more. They're playing on the field at the same time, Henry and Spears, which I like that from Tim Kelly, the offensive coordinator. But, man, it just feels like he's got the juice right now. And they've got to the Two-Tone Blues got to rely a little bit more maybe on Spears and have Henry maybe be that third and short goal line running back and maybe have Spears take over that bell cow. And I know that's a lot for Titans fans to hear. This is King Henry I'm talking about. But we've been, what was it? We're 5 games in now. 4 games, Henry has been, below average.
Is he healthy? Is he 100% healthy?
That is the reports.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, as healthy as a 30-year-old running back with as many,
Sure.
miles as you can be. But still some bright spots for the Titans. Let's not throw in the towel here. We're early in a long season. And, your big wide receiver that you came in and paid, DeAndre Hopkins, 140 yards on 8 catches. Him and Tannehill, that connection's coming together. That's huge. Like that took a minute, but that
was impressive, right? Yeah. So what's up next for the Titans? Who do they face next?
They'll go over to London and
that's right.
Face the Baltimore Ravens. So that'll be another tough game, but a Ravens team that's also playing below their standard. They took a tough loss against their rival Pittsburgh Steelers, like a game that they probably should have won. So 2 similar stories coming in here, but you've got another running quarterback that you'll go up against in Lamar Jackson over in London. And I think I believe the Ravens left today for London. The Titans don't leave till Thursday, which is an interesting strategy change there from team to team.
Well, because you want your people to be fresh, and there's the time differences, and you got to adjust to all of that.
Yeah.
I want. That's an interesting thought. I mean, how do you? What's the best way to get people there? Do you keep them here until the last minute?
Exactly.
Or do you let people go over early and acclimate?
Yeah, I think it's a 6-hour change from Middle Tennessee time over to London. So it's a big deal. I mean, it's.
But the game will be played at a normal time for us.
For them, I mean, it's at 8:30 in the morning. Here is when the game will play. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Really?
So, here 8:30. London games are 8:30. So bright and early Titans fans on Sunday. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I always found it harder to go over to Europe, to adjust to the time zone, and coming back was easier. It seemed to me, but I don't know why
I can
that
see
is.
that.
Yeah. I was over sometimes for a week or two, so I had time to adjust to the other and come back. But it was always easier coming back than it was going over. So I don't know. It's interesting. Well, thank you for the update.
Of course.
As long as I've got you here, Mac, that I know that you, as an individual, count on me for all of the lunar and space news.
Of course. What would I do without my lunar and moon man and Brian Wilson?
Well, we have a solar eclipse coming. On the you did not know 14th of October.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow!
Now we'll have somewhere around 60% of the sun will be covered, but if you want to get to totality, which is who doesn't want to see totality? You have the nearest town of any size of all that to Tennessee that would have totality would be San Antonio.
Really?
San Antonio.
Is this the one that I thought there was Ohio or something was going to have?
Maybe, but there's miles measured is what I'm saying.
Okay.
The solar eclipse will eventually begin in Oregon at 9:13 a.m. and will end in Texas at 12:03. The closest city to Tennessee that is in the path of totality is San Antonio.
Okay, I may be thinking of the one next year.
Yeah, it's the one next year you're thinking. The one the next year is drivable. You could easily do that. And so we will have, it says here, I had it right here, just the statistic. Yeah. The majority of the U.S. will be able to view a portion of the eclipse in some form. People in Tennessee will see between 60 and 40% of the sun covered. I think as the further you go west, the more is covered. So Memphis would have a better view than, for example, Nashville would have. But still, it's something that will be interesting.
Yeah.
Don't look at the sun. You need glasses for this, special glasses for this, or, get a pinhole box
We still have to tell people this.
I
Don't
think so.
look at the sun.
Don't look at the sun. What countries will be affected? North, Central, and South America. Belize, Brazil, Colombia, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, and the United States are all in the path of totality.
So
then the next one is the one that is, here it is, April 8th, 2024. We'll have another solar eclipse, and this one is drivable. We'll come across North America, passing over Mexico, the United States, Canada. While West Tennessee isn't in the path of totality, you could potentially drive to it if you lived in Memphis or if you wanted to go over to Arkansas. Tell your ma, tell your pa, going to send you back to Arkansas for that will be in April of next year. April. So, because I know you count on me, Mac Morey.
I need this. How would I not know? So Saturday. Okay, I'll be ready.
Saturday.
Totality.
And what time? What time of day? Does it say?
Now you've asked me a question I don't have the answer to.
Sorry.
Well, and last time we had our moon news, I was the only one who partook in going to look at the moon. So you guys better take part this time.
All right.
No
it will
promises.
begin in Oregon at 9:13 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, and will end in Texas at 12:03.
So I guess
the full
sometime
timeline for the annual is available for Little Rock, Arkansas. It will begin about 10 a.m. and the eclipse will happen at 12:59, which should be our maximum time. 1 o'clock.
All right.
Great.
So at least it's at a convenient hour. I was afraid it was going to be in the middle of the night.
Yeah. Solar eclipse in the middle of the night wouldn't work out. Wouldn't work out. All right, it's 48 minutes now past the hour of 5 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. Let me tell you about the folks over at Stoltz Co. If you're in the market for a pole barn, the two brothers that run Stoltz Co. are the two guys you need to talk to. Exceptional quality, craftsmanship, and fair prices. They can build you a new pole barn to your specifications with your needs in mind. That is the Stoltz Co. difference. You can use pole barns for all kinds of things. It can function as a classic tool or work barn or a garage, or you can even build it as a place to live. Flexibility is the key. They combine the classic post-frame barn look with the reliability of modern materials and techniques to give you a finished barn that will stand the test of time. They don't scrimp on quality. They don't cut corners. They believe their customers deserve only the best. So just go to their website, stoltzco.com, STOLTZCO.com, and take a look at some of the things they have posted there. When you take a look at it, you'll say, wow, this is impressive. This isn't my granddaddy's pole barn. No, this is something new. This is something different. The number 615-622-5992. Again, 615-622-5992. Stoltz Co., where quality workmanship and great customer service is affordable. Just go to their website, stoltzco.com, for more.
Hey folks, Paul Winkler here. One of the things that we see from time to time, well, way too often, is this. Let's say that you go to a financial advisor and they say, hey, you need to set up an investment portfolio, and what we need to do is we need to have some of your money in stocks or mutual funds or ETFs or something like that, and we need to have something fixed or guaranteed in your investment portfolio that'll protect you against the market downturns. And quite often what they're talking about, they may not use this word, but often what they're talking about is putting your money into some sort of an annuity, like an indexed annuity or something like that, or a fixed annuity. And what they're doing is they're saying, hey, let's put your money in both of these, which sounds really good. And you should. And typically in an investment portfolio, you do want to have fixed investments and stocks as well in the portfolio to protect against inflation. But here's what happens when you manage a portfolio. Let me use a really, really simple example. Let's say I have a portfolio and I got stocks in there. Then I have my fixed income, my bonds in the portfolio as well. And let's say I have half my money in each. When stocks really do well, what we want to do is they're going to be overweighted in my portfolio. I own too much of them because they've done well compared to bonds. It was supposed to be half and half, and now maybe it's 70% stocks and 30% bonds, let's say, or something like that. So I want to sell some of this and buy some of that to bring it back to 50-50 and back and forth throughout time. Well, the problem is when you're managing a portfolio and rebalancing in that way, bringing it back to the original portfolio mix of half and half in my example, I'm going to have to incur a trading cost or a commission or a back-end surrender with the annuity. It doesn't make any sense to use that product in this particular manner. Why do people do it? Well, the reason quite often is this. Commissions are very high with these products. And a lot of firms, they actually require their advisors to recommend a certain amount of annuities for every person that walks in the door. Now, typically annuities are used for a different purpose. They were actually designed for a totally different purpose. And that was distribution toward the end of life. When somebody looks like they're going to run out of money, they're annuitized. Now, let me tell you something. One study showed there was only like 5% of annuities are ever used in that fashion. Most often they're sold as an accumulation vehicle like this, and they were never really designed for that purpose. If you want to learn more, call us for a free 15-minute phone call or go to our website, paulwinkler.com. The number 615-851-1950 or paulwinkler.com. We don't do anything on commission, and we like to rail against these types of things and help investors do what is in their best interest. paulwinkler.com.
The latest on the Iran and Israel conflict, a 13-year-old shot in Tennessee, more strikes around the nation, and drug busts. Those stories and more coming up 6 o'clock right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
It is 5:55 now on Super Talk 99.7. Coming up, we'll do a little talk about politics, find out what happened today. There is a major announcement with regard to RFK. He's no longer campaigning as a Democrat. He's now campaigning as an independent. What does that mean? A lot of people, I would say, on our side of the equation are intrigued. I think that's the word. Intrigued by RFK because they like him and his position on certain things. But is he truly someone that you could vote for long term? I'm going to raise some concerns that I have about that and whether or not he is someone that could garner any conservative support. I have major issues with some of the things that he has said and done in the past, and I think if you're not careful, you could end up with a pig in a poke. And I want to look real careful at RFK before, anybody gets too excited. You might want to listen to what I have to say about that coming up in just a moment. It's all straight ahead right here on Super Talk 99.7. I'm Brian Wilson, and you're listening to The Drive. We'll wrap things up in the next hour with the 6 o'clock edition of The Drive. Stay tuned, everyone. Grace Point Healthcare delivers medicine affordably with menu-style transparent pricing so you know how much it will cost before the care is delivered. They are best known for their Smart Care plan. $69 a month. You get unlimited office visits and free basic labs for the entire year. Think about that. Unlimited office visits and free basic labs. That's something. And because we treat the whole family, even newborns, you can offer family plans as well. In conjunction with a high-deductible insurance plan, this could save you and your family a lot of money. At Grace Point, they take their time with each patient. They see you the same or next day. There are no long wait times or crowded wait rooms. They treat naturally whenever possible, and it is a military vet-owned practice. That's just some of the reasons why it's been voted the best primary care provider by Toast of Music City year after year after year. Couple of things. COVID testing is available, and they have treatments that can help you if you get COVID so you can get over it perhaps more quickly than you might otherwise. So if you think you have COVID, don't waste a moment. Go by. Also, seasonal allergies are here, and they have the ability to test and treat, so you can get back outside and enjoy the season. Grace Point Healthcare on Main Street in Franklin, 599-6868. That's 599-6868 to schedule a visit.
Six o'clock, Mac Maury with your top story. 70 degrees right now. Forecast, latest traffic report on the way in 5 minutes. In an op-ed with the Wall Street Journal, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell suggested Congress could tie future aid for Israel with the request for additional aid to Ukraine. Im Nguyen has more from Washington.
Amid the unrest in Israel, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell suggested Congress could potentially link future aid for Israel with an outstanding request for additional aid to Ukraine, according to his op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. This after aid to Ukraine was left out of the spending bill that passed that would keep the government open through mid-November. For now, it appears there is bipartisan support to send funds to Israel after the deadly attacks by Hamas militants. Meanwhile, President Biden is preparing to speak with allies about the situation in Israel.
And Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn joined WTN's The Drive with Brian Wilson, gave an update on American citizens that may be in peril there.
We also are waiting to find out hostages. We are hearing that there are Americans that have been taken hostage, and we do not know the number of Americans that are injured. We do know it's a number north of 2,000 that have been injured.
And National Security Coordinator and Advisor John Kirby said today there is still not any proof that Iran had involvement in those attacks. Crime right now in Tennessee, a shooting that resulted in an injured 13-year-old in Clarksville last night is now being investigated. Officials say it happened in the Summit Heights housing area. Juveniles aged 12 to 16 were in a fight. After that fight, reports indicate that one of them fired shots from down the street. Police believe this to not be a random act, and the 13-year-old girl had injuries on her upper leg and was taken to a hospital for treatment. And Walgreens pharmacy employees signaling a possible strike on the horizon, citing harsh working conditions. Will Reeve.
Walkout organizers telling ABC News that more than 700 employees from the company's 9,000 stores are planning on participating, hoping to improve what they're calling understaffing and poor working conditions. One employee telling ABC News employees are overworked, juggling vaccine appointments, filling prescriptions, answering phones, and as a result, in some cases, are seeing prescriptions going unfilled.
And the company telling WSIL it recognizes that the last few years have been challenging and is committed to ensuring the team has support and resources, including making investments in some pharmacist wages and hiring bonuses in some locations. Some more crime in the Volunteer State News 2 says that 10 people were arrested over the weekend for selling balloons that were filled with laughing gas. Officials said most of them were not from Tennessee. The laughing gas was being inhaled by the buyers. And in addition to the arrest, authorities seized about 20 cylindrical canisters. 3 vehicles were also seized as evidence. That is the latest news. Traffic and weather next. I'm Mac Morey, WTN News.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's 6 minutes now, almost 7 minutes past the hour of 6 o'clock on Super Talk. Thank you so much for listening to The Drive. We greatly appreciate your support for this endeavor each and every day. We're glad to have you along for the ride. We'll get you home safely and make sure that you get a little information along the way. Been talking a lot about Israel. I think we'll get back to that after the at the bottom of the hour. And if you missed some of the things that Senator Blackburn had to say, we'll repeat some of that and the after the news at the bottom of the hour with Mac Morey. I want to get into 2024 politics right now, if I could, and talk about that for just a moment. Oh, well, apparently that's not going to work. There it is. Hey, love it when all this comes together. Push the right buttons, Brian. Time for a 2024 update and talk a little bit about where we are. I think some really important stuff has happened. If you don't know, RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., announced today that he is no longer running as a Democrat. He's irritated with the Democrat Party for not opening the primary up where you could have a fair shot at it. And he says he's going to run now as an independent.
I'm here to declare myself an independent candidate. An independent candidate for President of the United States.
So he's going to run as an independent. What does that mean? Well, it means that he will go out there and be a third-party candidate. Who would he draw from? Well, I mean, I think the Biden people are upset that he's doing that. And I think the Trump people are upset as well. Experts, according to themessenger.com, with Kennedy now running as an independent, experts say it's possible that former President Donald Trump could see his support weakened in a hypothetical match against President Joe Biden. See, I think people on the Republican side of the equation, on the conservative side of the equation, are sort of enamored by him. Or maybe it's just the independents who are enamored with him. I don't know. But I just want to warn you, I know that that you love, a lot of people really love his position on vaccines, for example. And you've seen some of the things he's done and said about that. And you know, I can understand why that appeals to you. But I just want to say, be careful of what you get with RFK. I want to just bring a couple of things to your attention. Number one, he's been a long time contributor to Democrat candidates. Are you going to vote for a man who has been supportive of, well, for the last election, Joe Biden? He has spoken on regular occasions, on many occasions, about how he admires Bernie Sanders, perhaps the most progressive member in Congress. He has said at times that he believes that the NRA is a terrorist group. Those who are within the sound of my voice who have strong feelings about the Second Amendment, did you know that? Were you aware of that? And he wants us all to divest of fossil fuels. He's very much a Green New Deal kind of guy. I don't know. I add up those things right there, and I say, I'm not interested in RFK at all. But I keep reading where there are people who are truly on the Republican side of the equation. I mean, we've actually opened up the phones, and people have said, I think he should be Trump's running mate. Be sure you do your research. Be sure, there's plenty of time for you to get read up on RFK Jr. And make sure that I mean, you're entitled to vote as you please. Who am I to tell you how to vote? But I think you need to make sure you understand clearly what his positions are, even if you happen to like one or two of them. So again, I don't know how that's going to play out as an independent. I think we're going to have maybe two or three different independent candidates. So he's going to run as an independent. The No Labels group could potentially put up Joe Manchin or someone else as their candidate, and so that one would be interesting because Manchin is a very conservative Democrat when it comes to things like energy and the Second Amendment. He's very strong. So how would that play out among independents? The good news for Trump is, as it stands right now, he's doing pretty well. I mean, nobody in the Republican Party can touch him. I mean, he's so far ahead, 40, 50 points ahead of his nearest competitor, which is DeSantis or or Nikki Haley, depending on which polls you look at. But one way or the other, way, 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 way ahead. Almost impossible for anybody in the Republican Party to catch him, given how far ahead he is right now. And he's doing pretty well in the all-important battleground states. Listen to this story from the Daily Caller. Nearly 70% of Americans feel like our country is on the wrong track, and Biden's approval rating sits at around 40%. Across the states, though, where they had the narrowest margins of victory in 2020, the so-called battleground states, Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, Trump now leads on average, if you average all that together, 41 to 35%, according to a mid-September Reuters Ipsos poll. In other words, he's got 6 points on him. Pretty good for battleground states on average. So here's the breakdown. Trump is leading Biden by 2 points in Pennsylvania. The swingiest of all the swing states is Pennsylvania. It used to be others, but I think we can all agree if you want to be the president of the United States, the path must take you through Pennsylvania. Georgia, Trump is ahead of Biden by 9 points, according to a Rasmussen report released on September 15th. The former president is also beating Biden in North Carolina by 4 points, a near 3-point gain from when Trump won the state in 2020. It was very close in North Carolina before. And it's important to remember that Trump only lost Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin by about 40,000 votes combined. So the assumption that Biden would cruise to re-election if Trump becomes the nominee was flawed from the start, said one observer. That aside, Biden's numbers have been dropping recently across the board on things like crime and immigration, and rampant mismanagement of crisis after crisis have all combined to sour his standing with Americans, which has begun to show in his polling numbers. Today, around 60% of Americans disapprove of Biden's handling of immigration, the highest number that has been seen throughout his presidency. Trump would beat Biden 47 to 43% in a national head-to-head matchup, and the former president is advantaged more with third-party candidates in the mix, according to McLaughlin and Associates. So he's running to win, and it looks pretty good for him, especially if you consider these battleground battles. To be ahead 2 points in Pennsylvania at this point, which is, it was really close last time, is an amazing thing. So, I like what I'm reading here about the battleground states, and I hear you. No, I hear you yelling at the radio right now. But Brian, that only makes sense if the elections are fair. And I think that's a fair point. I hear you. But I do believe that Republicans have done some things to try to shore that up. I said that in 2022. I said that they had done some things, and you said, well, I'm not sure that they have. Well, I think they have, and I think they continue to make those adjustments. One of the things that's going to be very different this time, if you're a Republican, is you're going to be actively asked to bundle where you can bundle and to vote early where you can vote early. They're not going to count on Republicans coming to the polls on Election Day. They have seen how effective the Democrats have been, and every state is now gearing up to push people to the polls much earlier and to do everything they can to accommodate people going to the polls earlier. Because you know what? Even though you have every intention of voting, life intervenes sometimes. So, giving you a window where you can vote early seems to be a lot more reliable. It has been for the Democrats that to wait on the day and then, I meant to get by, but this came up, or I got caught in traffic, or you never know. There's 1,000 things that can happen. As I say, life intervenes. So I think it will be a big change. I really do. I can't really gauge just yet how much these independent candidacies that we may be seeing will draw from both sides. They're designed to appeal to the middle, and you can't win an election without having the middle. I've told you that, but it changes the dynamic when you get 3 or 4 viable candidates. I'm not talking about people who might win, but they're viable enough. Like Ross Perot pulled 19%. If RFK were to pull 19% of the vote out of the middle, it's anybody's guess what might happen. In a three-way race, you need, 34% to win. In a four-way race, you only need 25 or 26% to win. So, you look at this and you go, wow, with all of these independent candidates, if you have a viable no labels candidate, if you have RFK who remains viable, it's going to be really interesting, and it really scrambles the numbers in a big, big, big way. I've said before, and I'll say it again, for a lot of different reasons, this is going to be the most interesting, perhaps most bizarre election cycle this country's ever known. And in the history of the entire country, we're never going to see one that is wild and crazy as this one. I mean, on one hand, the Democrat nominee is being pushed out there if it continues to be Joe Biden. I don't think it will be, but it is right now. You've got a guy who is practically brain dead. And well, maybe that's a little strong, but not much. And you got a guy who has horrible numbers, but Democrats will support him over Trump. Even if they hate him, they'll vote for him because they hate Trump more. Then on the other side of the equation, Republicans are putting forth a guy who's got 91 charges leveled against him and indictments around the country. And how will that play out? I don't know. I can't tell you. So far, it doesn't seem to have hurt him at all. Every time he gets indicted, his numbers go up. And, so it doesn't seem that the Republicans are at all concerned about Donald Trump at one whit. And then if you get a person like Joe Manchin, who has some conservative positions, and RFK, who has some, I think, less conservative positions, I think he's way left of center, in my estimation. Then it's just no way to tell how the whole thing might come out. It really makes it a much more difficult race to call. But one way or the other, we are at it. I'm just looking at Real Clear Politics real quick to give you sort of a sense of this. The national average, Trump leads DeSantis 57 points to 12 points. That's a lot. That's on average. I can pull it up here and see. Yeah, I mean, we got some polls where Trump has had 56 points. Here's one where he's ahead by 45 points. Here's one where he's ahead by 52 points. Here's another one where he's ahead by 45 points. The worst case, Trump's ahead by 35 points. Now, that's according to an Insider Advantage poll. But I don't think I think that's the outlier. And maybe the 56 is an outlier, but somewhere around 45 to 48% lead over DeSantis. Haley's got, DeSantis is 12 on average. Haley, 7.2. Ramaswamy, 5.8. Pence, 3.7. Christie, 2.4. The rest don't matter. Tim Scott, 2.2. But on average, he leads by about 45 points. On average. For the Republican nomination. And he's doing well in Iowa. He's doing well in New Hampshire. He's doing well in South Carolina. All states where, he may not have 45 points, but he's doing really well. And it's a huge gap for DeSantis or anybody else who's running for the Republican nomination to overcome. 20 minutes now past the hour of 6 o'clock on Super Talk. DT McCallsons.com. That's where you want to go, man. I'm telling you, DT McCall's the place to go if you need something for your house, whether it's furniture or appliances. I mean, listen, think about it. If you need something for your house, there's a pretty good chance the folks at DT McCall have it. And if you've not been to a DT McCall store, you really should go. I'm telling you, when you get there, you're going to be just shocked, stunned, and amazed at how big some of these places are. Cavernous. And you go from one room to another room, and you think you've seen it all, then you turn the corner, there's a whole nother room. And then you go to a whole nother room. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. It's like a maze, quite frankly. You can get lost in that place, but they'll help you get out. And I'm telling you, with that kind of selection, it makes it a lot easier for you to find something that you really love. People have been over to my house, rave about the couch that we got for our living room area. Something we use each and every day. but it's a beautiful showpiece, and it really is nice. And you know what? It wasn't exactly what I wanted when I was thinking about it. It wasn't exactly what Cabana Wife wanted, but we went in there with different ideas, and we looked at this immediately and said, that is perfect. We need to get that. That's what happens when you have a lot of selection. So whether you need furniture, whether you need appliances, you need a Cub Cadet mower, whatever you need, you're going to find it at DT McCall's. More than 100 years they've been in business. You don't make it that long without treating people right. And whenever possible, DT McCall's sells products that are made and manufactured in Middle Tennessee. A lot to love about this company, good people. Learn more about their convenient locations in Middle Tennessee by going to their website, dtmccalls.com. It is now 26 minutes past the hour. Let me just tell you a quick story about my trip that I made to Gaza City. It was some years ago when I was working at the Fox News Channel. And, I would say this about the Fox News Channel. They often believed in giving reporters an opportunity to learn on the job. And Yasser Arafat had just passed away. And I called up my bosses and said, you know what? With Yasser Arafat gone, a lot of people were talking about the potential for peace. Turned out it didn't work out that way, but a lot of people were talking about it. I said, I must tell you, I just don't understand the Middle East. And I said, they got a guy that has promised to give me like a a Class A tour of the Mideast. His name was Dennis Ross. He was a former envoy, Mideast envoy for many, many years, both for Democrats and Republicans. Guy knows more about the Mideast. He's forgotten more than I'll ever know. And he said he's agreed to show me around if I can get over there. Will you pay for my passage? And they did. They put me on a plane and sent me over there and put me up in a hotel, and I went all over Israel with Dennis Ross. And then I got a call from Mike Tobin, who worked out of the Fox Jerusalem Bureau, saying, we're going to Gaza tomorrow. Do you want to go? Well, I thought, yeah. So I bid my farewell to Dennis Ross, and I jumped in a news car and went down to Gaza with Mike Tobin and his crew. They were interviewing someone there, and what an experience it was to go through the Aries Gate and all the security. I mean, they make you stand with at some distance from the security checkpoints when you come out with your hands out to the side. And then all of a sudden you hear a buzzing noise. Like, I don't know what they're scanning me with, but they're scanning me with something. I mean, that's how incredibly tight. And they said, what do you have in your pocket? And I said, my keys. He said, pull them out and hold them in your hand. And they can see that I had keys in my pocket from 50 yards. So it was really sort of unbelievable. But one of the things I noticed was, as you go into Gaza, the destruction between the gate and actual Gaza City. It's several miles over to Gaza City. And this area in between has just been destroyed by conflict after conflict after conflict, and really has become sort of a buffer zone between Israel and Gaza. But what became clear to me is, with all their observation technology and all of their high-powered weaponry, they can go in there with impunity. I mean, they can go into Gaza with no problem whatsoever. Now, the fighting in Gaza City will be difficult because it's urban warfare, and Hamas will always have the high ground. But that's why they've been softening the battlefield and taking out Hamas positions before they go in. But 100,000 troops going into Gaza, Israel will be able to control this situation quite handily. Now the question is, do other people in the region stand idly by while that happens, like Iran, which has been a supporter of Hamas? Not clear at all how that may all play out over time. But I can tell you, there's no doubt in my mind, after walking through that area and then having seen in the days before just, the capabilities of the Israeli military and the way that the people in Israel think about this issue. There's no doubt in my mind that they will ultimately prevail, and the folks in Gaza are in for a punishing few days. And I just want to say in advance, there will be civilians who are killed inside Gaza. And that's because the Hamas leadership put their equipment and their weaponry and their leadership, they use the civilians as human shields. They put their stuff near a school, for example, or near a hospital, knowing that the Israelis will be very, reluctant to attack a hospital. But that's the way they operate. This is the kind of folks we're dealing with. The savagery of the Hamas invasion into Israel was just horrific. And we're in for some tough days ahead. But I have no doubt that the Israelis will prevail. It is now 6:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hey, how are you faring in the rough and tumble market? Up one day, down the next, up and down, up and down, up and down. Well, the experts at Beacon Capital Management understand all that can be a little scary, but here's the thing. Beacon Capital Management has a plan to assess where you are and help you make any mid-course corrections that might be needed. Wouldn't it be great to have peace of mind that you're on the right path? Beacon can provide that reassurance, and all it takes is a simple phone call to get things started. 615-488-9303. Call that number. The folks at Beacon will ask you a few questions. They'll gather some information from you, and then sit back and let them take it from there. I mean, you have nothing to lose except for all the worry. Get started today by calling 615-488-9303. Now, at the end of the process, you'll be able to rest easy knowing you have a plan that meets all your retirement goals. Replace the worry with confidence that you're on the right path. That number again is 615-488-9303. The experts at Beacon stand ready to take your stress away, and you can learn more at askbeaconnow.com. We Good evening, everyone. It is 37 minutes now past the hour of 6 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7. I am Brian Wilson. I am your friend and radio buddy, and you're listening to The Drive. Earlier today, we talked with the senior senator from the state of Tennessee, Marsha Blackburn, about the situation now ongoing in Israel. And in case you missed it, here's a little bit of what she had to say. She's learned quite a bit, and here is Marsha Blackburn from earlier in the show. We now are hearing that 11 Americans are dead, and we don't have any clue as to how many might have been kidnapped or where they might be.
You're correct with that, and we know that we will get updates on the deaths as we move forward through the next few days. We also are waiting to find out hostages. We are hearing that there are Americans that have been taken hostage. And we do not know the number of Americans that are injured. We do know it's a number north of 2,000 that have been injured. So that's kind of the framework of the casualties that we know. And of course, Brian, I have just prayed, as I know so many have, for Israel, for the nation, for the state of Israel, for the people that are in harm's way. And this is an unprovoked attack. We do know that Iran participated, coaching Hamas, working with them to draft this attack. And this is the reason why we have said do not release any of those $6 billion to Iran. We hear that once the $6 billion was approved to be transferred to them, that they escalated the planning and then last week gave the go-ahead to carry out this attack. So I am leading a letter in the Senate calling on the White House to rescind the waivers that would have allowed the South Koreans to go through that process of transferring that money. It was held in South Korean accounts, and it was transferred the end of September to accounts in Qatar. But we need to rescind the waivers that will allow the Iranians access to that money.
Yeah, I'm a little shocked that they didn't say right off the bat, let's refreeze that money. They didn't. That should have been the first thing they announced.
They should have done that, and they should have done sanctions, because Iran is making a bundle of money selling oil to Russia and to China. And what we should have done is put those sanctions in place. Another thing we've got in our letter is to disallow banks to process, sanction banks if they process any of these funds. And I'll tell you something else I think needs to happen. Qatar needs to allow extradition of these Hamas leaders that are cuddled up in safety there in Qatar, send them to the U.S. to face charges for war crimes and for what they have done to American citizens and to the Israeli people.
Well, I agree with you 1,000%. You know, we're supposed to have good relationship with Qatar, but I'm wondering if we really do. Okay, very quickly, a couple of really quick snippets that I want you to react to. Here is Jake Sullivan 2 weeks ago giving a speech about how he sees the Middle East right now.
The Middle East region is quieter today than it has been in 2 decades.
Well, they were wrong about that. And then the President of the United States hasn't been seen today at all, will not be seen today at all. But when he did poke his head out briefly over the weekend, he told us that he got up at about 7:30 and 8 o'clock to begin his round of calls.
I got up this morning, started this at 7:30, 8 o'clock, my calls. Hamas terrorists crossing in Israel, killing not only Israeli soldiers, but Israeli civilians.
There's just one problem. The attack against Israel began the previous night at about 11:50. It's like they didn't wake the old man up.
That's right. And so this had escalated before he got into making any kind of comment about this and sending a message to the terrorist organizations. Look, Hezbollah has gotten in this. They're shooting rockets into the north, and you've got them coming into the east. And Brian, they need to say right now, don't you even think about this. And I have said specifically, anything that shoots, sails, flies, or spies, we need to send it in there right now and be sure that Israel has everything they need to defend themselves.
Well, a lot of people are asking a question about that. A lot of people are asking a question about that. Do we have enough supplies, given the fact that we've been sending all kinds of weaponry to Ukraine?
We do have supplies. We have supplies that are stationed over there in the region. We have supplies that are there in Israel, and they need to get this to them. As I said, anything that shoots, sails, flies, or spies, if they need it, we need to turn it loose so that Israel has what they need to defend themselves. They are our greatest ally in the region. They have been a constant and steady partner. We have helped them with building the Iron Dome. We have helped them focus on these defense capabilities, and we need to stand with them through this. This is an unprovoked attack. You have had the Ayatollah come out and say this is all part of getting rid of Israel, which they want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. And this is part of their steps to doing that. So Iran, the largest state sponsor of terrorism on the face of the earth, has used Hamas and now Hezbollah, two of their proxies, two of them, to go in here and do this attack against Israel.
We're sending an aircraft group in there, the
That's
USS
right,
Gerald
the
Ford.
Ford.
And
Right.
so let me ask you a question. I mean, at what point should our U.S. military get involved in this? I mean, the Israelis don't need our help going into Gaza. They can put 100 or 200,000 people into Gaza, and they just don't need us with boots on the ground. They probably need us with intelligence, but we have an interest here in that apparently it appears that Americans are being held hostage. Should we should we use our military to try to rescue them if necessary, if we can figure out where the heck they are?
We're going to have to take steps to go in and secure American citizens. I do not know what those steps are going to be. I have no doubt that they are working on what those steps are going to be. But we want to make certain that our people are safe and secure. And, Brian, that is something that is going to be developing. But Israel has said, we don't need your troops, we need your support. And that is why the armor, the ammo, the equipment, as I say, shoots, cells, flies, spies, get everything in there that they need.
Well, I think that will indeed happen. A little doubt in my mind that, if we have pre-positioned military equipment inside Israel, then I'm sure that they'll have anything that they need in the way of being resupplied. Don't see any problem there. I was concerned because I was told, we give in so much of our military stuff that we have warehoused in America to Ukraine. Do we still have the ability to support Israel? And apparently the answer to that question is a resounding yes. So Israel is mobilizing 100,000 troops for an incursion into Gaza. No doubt they're going in. There will be boots on the ground inside the Gaza Strip. From the townhall.com, it may be the worst intelligence failure since the 1973 Yom Kippur War, a conflict that almost destroyed Israel after there was a surprise attack from Syria and Egypt. Israel was on the brink as Syrian forces reclaimed the Golan Heights, and it was sheer luck that invading force didn't move further to capture key bridges along the Jordan River. That was a horrible thing. This is, by the way, the 50th anniversary of that. Very near the 50th anniversary. Did anybody not think that might, given how important anniversaries are and dates are in that particular part of the world, that maybe you needed to be on higher alert, maybe you need to be watching for something? How did they miss this is, I think, one of the great questions that will be asked, because this is a major operation by Hamas. It's not just, lobbing a few grenades or a few mortars. This is a very well-planned military operation by Hamas, and nobody seemed to see it coming. The problem, of course, is if Israel goes into Gaza to start, fighting the war and trying to find where the hostages might be, Hamas says they'll start killing people if they come in. And they say any targeting of innocent civilians without warning will be met regretfully by executing one of the captives in our custody, and will be forced to broadcast this execution. That's what Hamas is. They're going to put it on TV. Hamas has claimed to be holding more than 100 Israeli prisoners, and that's probably a low number. The warning came from Hamas as Israeli defense forces intensified a bombardment of Gaza as dusk fell on Monday. The Gaza city is being bombed pretty relentlessly by the Israelis tonight. What I would say about that is they have a lot of intelligence about where Hamas or Hamas leadership is located within Gaza. It's not a very big area. They have the ability to have a lot of information about where those folks are located, and they are taking out anything associated with Hamas. The problem is and by the way, they've been notified by Israel in advance. we're going to come after Hamas. If you live near a Hamas, encampment or an operation, get away because we're coming after those. Well, that's to keep civilian injuries down, but there's no way to avoid it because Hamas builds all of its facilities and puts their weaponry right in very sensitive civilian areas like hospitals and schools and churches. And so if you attack them, you are attacking a church or a hospital or a school. And there's just little doubt that civilians will die. But I don't know that you can tell Israel no after the brutality, the savagery that they experienced during this attack. I mean, at one point carrying a Holocaust survivor who was in a wheelchair back into Gaza to hold them as a hostage. Come on, really? Tell me that Israel should hold back. They're gonna come at Hamas with everything they have, and it will be ugly. Well, by the way, although they have overwhelming force, that's not to say that the fighting will be easy, because Hamas will have the high ground. The town is full of tall buildings. Urban warfare is really difficult warfare, but don't underestimate the professionalism of the Israeli forces. They are quite good, and I don't have any doubt at all that they will prevail. 50 minutes now, past the hour of 6 o'clock. Let's talk about the Wellness Institute of Nashville. Dr. Kevin Mitchell is my doctor, and he can be your doctor, and they've got specials going. So here's the real question. If you've been in pain, what are you holding back from? Because we can get you in and get you started and get you feeling better. That's the whole plan. Starts with a phone call. So why don't you just call this number, write it down, 615-246-5009. If you have tingling, numbness, weakness, back pain, disc bulging, disc herniation, spinal stenosis, then call that number and set up an appointment. What will happen is that you'll go through an assessment. Dr. Kevin Mitchell or Ashley Mitchell will go and meet with you and tell you exactly, what's wrong and what they can do to make it better. And then you can take advantage, if you're a new patient, of their $23 new patient special. Take advantage of an exam, consultation, x-rays if you need them. First treatment starts at $23, and you'll be able to get half off spinal decompression and half off the KT knee machine, which is sort of like spinal decompression, but really aimed at helping you if you have knee pain. Dr. Kevin Mitchell is a national leader in spinal decompression. And again, it starts with a phone call, 615-246-5009. Learn more at painisbad.com.
Hey folks, Paul Winkler here. One of the things that we see from time to time, well, way too often, is this. Let's say that you go to a financial advisor and they say, hey, you need to set up an investment portfolio, and what we need to do is we need to have some of your money in stocks or mutual funds or ETFs or something like that, and we need to have something fixed or guaranteed in your investment portfolio that'll protect you against the market downturns. And quite often what they're talking about, they may not use this word, but often what they're talking about is putting your money into some sort of an annuity, like an indexed annuity or something like that, or a fixed annuity. And what they're doing is they're saying, hey, let's put your money in both of these, which sounds really good. And you should. And typically in an investment portfolio, you do want to have fixed investments and stocks as well in the portfolio to protect against inflation. But here's what happens when you manage a portfolio. Let me use a really, really simple example. Let's say I have a portfolio and I got stocks in there. Then I have my fixed income, my bonds in the portfolio as well. And let's say I have half my money in each. When stocks really do well, what we want to do is they're going to be overweighted in my portfolio. I own too much of them because they've done well compared to bonds. It was supposed to be half and half, and now maybe it's 70% stocks and 30% bonds, let's say, or something like that. So I want to sell some of this and buy some of that to bring it back to 50-50 and back and forth throughout time. Well, the problem is when you're managing a portfolio and rebalancing in that way, bringing it back to the original portfolio mix of half and half in my example, I'm going to have to incur a trading cost or a commission or a back-end surrender with the annuity. It doesn't make any sense to use that product in this particular manner. Why do people do it? Well, the reason quite often is this. Commissions are very high with these products. And a lot of firms, they actually require their advisors to recommend a certain amount of annuities for every person that walks in the door. Now, typically annuities are used for a different purpose. They were actually designed for a totally different purpose. And that was distribution toward the end of life. When somebody looks like they're going to run out of money, they're annuitized. Now, let me tell you something. One study showed there was only like 5% of annuities are ever used in that fashion. Most often they're sold as an accumulation vehicle like this, and they were never really designed for that purpose. If you want to learn more, call us for a free 15-minute phone call or go to our website, paulwinkler.com. The number 615-851-1950 or paulwinkler.com. We don't do anything on commission, and we like to rail against these types of things and help investors do what is in their best interest. paulwinkler.com.